Chapter 251. Bang! Other than the White Ape Demon King and Qiao Shui, all the other demons fell to the ground. Their heads had all exploded, leaving behind headless corpses. It was a bloody scene. Qiao Shui looked at her dead companions in shock. They were still talking to each other a quarter of an hour ago, but now, they were separated by life and death. They didn't even have a chance to resist and fell to the ground. Even their demon souls didn't have a good ending. Qiao Shui was a human, so the possession formation didn't work on her. She escaped death. However, it was different for the other demons. Even the White Ape Demon King beside her had a pained expression. He could no longer stand, but he was still holding on. The possession formation set up by the people of the Gate of Hell was actually able to restrain the powerful White Ape Demon King. The possession formation, using thousands of pure human souls as the price to reap the souls of us demons. The people of the Gate of Hell are so vicious. You even killed your own people. The White Ape Demon King's face began to distort. He was too careless. When he first broke free from the seal, he thought that he could deal with all the nascent soul humans with his raw strength. However, he never expected that there would be people from the Gate of Hell. The people of the Gate of Hell were evil and strange. The possession formation was even more vicious. They killed people and killed themselves. It was specially used to deal with the White Ape Demon King. If it was any other time, how could this level of formation hurt him? However, he hadn't merged with his inner core. He only had the most primitive strength in his body. Without any cultivation, he couldn't resist the terrifying power of the possession formation. If it wasn't for his extraordinary strength, he would have become a headless corpse. However, if this trend continued, it was only a matter of time before he fell. How can the souls of a few thousand mortals compare to the life of the White Ape Demon King? Gui Shenyu revealed a smug smile. Mu Yu was burning with anger. The lives of a few thousand people were so insignificant in the eyes of the people of the Gate of Hell. They were unscrupulous in order to achieve their goals. How could such a sect still exist in this world? As for you, traitor of the human race, you actually helped the demons. I'll clean up the sect for the human race. Gui Shuanyue's gaze fell on Qiao Shui. Then, countless resentful spirits rushed out of the ghost fog and bit at Qiao Shui. Be careful. The White Ape Demon King suddenly stood in front of Qiao Shui. All the resentful souls pounced on him, tearing and biting him. The trembling of his soul caused the White Ape Demon King to roar again. The heart-wrenching pain was something that even the White Ape Demon King couldn't withstand. Demon Monarch. Qiao Shui brandished the water spirit in her hand and swept away all the vengeful spirits. The water vapor in the air turned into ice crystals and swept towards the vengeful spirits. However, the vengeful spirit broke through the ice and continued towards Qiao Shui. Quick, give me the inner core. White Ape Demon King bit his lip and roared. But, otherwise, we will all die here. The White Ape Demon King urged impatiently. You want to fuse with your inner core? In your dreams. Qiao Shui had just taken out the Demon Monarch's core when a tiny wraith appeared beside her. Its sharp claws snatched the Demon Monarch's core away. As the array rippled, the inner core of the Demon King was already in Gui Shuanyue's hands. TSK, TSK. Demon King inner core. What an unexpected gain. This is a great treasure, Gui Shenyu exclaimed as he took out the White Demon King's inner core. However, he suddenly frowned and looked behind him. His expression became fierce. Someone had stepped into the 9 formations of possession. It wasn't Mu Yu, but a young man with disheveled hair. This person was wearing hemp clothes. Half of his clothes were black and the other half was white. Even his hair was black and white, making him look like a black and white impermanence. It was extremely awkward. The black and white young man looked at Gui Shenyu and revealed a miserable smile. Gui Shenyu, it doesn't seem right for the Gate of Hell to monopolize the White Ape Demon King, right? Sai Wusheng, people from the Gate of Life and Death are not welcome here. Gui Shenyu narrowed his eyes. He seemed to be very wary of this black and white young man. The moment this disciple named Sai Wusheng entered the 9 formations of possession, the surrounding vengeful spirits didn't dare to approach him. Even the ghost fog dispersed. Mu Yu's eyes narrowed. Zhuo Fengjian and the others said that the people who attacked them were very similar to the people from the Gate of Life and Death. Could it be true? The Gate of Life and Death and the Gate of Hell targeted the White Ape Demon King at the same time? We had the same goal as you and did the same thing. We sent people to intercept the disciples and demons of other sects on the mountain so that the White Ape Demon King could escape here. We were all prepared to wait for you to enter the trap. How could you take the prey alone? Sai Wusheng stretched out his withered fingers. The nails on his fingers were quite long, almost as long as his own fingers. It looked very scary. Gui Shenyu snorted. How did you know that the White Ape Demon King would come here? You have your little cat, but I also have my little bug. Sai Wusheng waved his hand and a huge silkworm appeared beside him. The silkworm's body became extremely pale. With a slight shake, it turned into a chubby little fatty. Its eyes were dull and there was no color on its body. How about we each take what we need? You take the White Ape Demon King's soul, and I take the Demon King's body. We have nothing to do with each other. What you need to do is not let the White Ape Demon King become a headless corpse. I don't like to make headless zombies. The Gate of Hell focused on the soul, while the Gate of Life and Death focused on the body. Due to the surveillance of the Sanchong Palace, the way they trained their disciples was similar to the way they trained the disciples of the Gate of Hell. They trained two people with the same talent from a young age and waited for the right time to kill each other. The loser would become the puppet of the winner. When fighting with the people of the Gate of Life and Death, it was also a 1 versus 2 situation. It was very difficult to deal with. What if I don't agree? Gui Shenyu asked. Then you are too polite. The Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death are family after all, aren't they? Sai Wusheng moved his fingers. His movements were very stiff, like a zombie that had not moved for many years. This had something to do with his strange martial arts. Gui Shenyu lowered his head and pondered. His eyes flickered. Finally, he said, okay. The Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death both practiced evil martial arts. Gui Shenyu was very familiar with Sai Wusheng's strength. If they fought, it would be impossible to determine the winner. He knew that since Sai Wusheng dared to enter the possession formation, he would not let him go easily. What Gui Shenyu wanted was the White Ape Demon King's soul. As for the White Ape Demon King's body, he did not care. Then, how about we deal with this traitor first? Sai Wusheng twisted his head, causing his neck to creak. Qiao Shue's face was pale. Her companions were killed, the Demon King's inner core was stolen, and even the White Ape Demon King was trapped due to his carelessness. At this moment, there were two unfathomable self-cultivators who wanted to kill her. How could she resist with her own strength? Her heart was filled with endless despair, but a trace of determination appeared on her face. Even if she had to die, she would not let these two sects have an easy time. At this moment, Mu Yu's figure flashed through her mind. She didn't know why she thought of Mu Yu. However, Mu Yu had helped her in every way in the underground palace. How she wished that Mu Yu would help her now. However, she was the one who stole the Demon King's inner core from Mu Yu. How could Mu Yu help her? He should have already returned to the third layer of heaven with the other sect's disciples. Qiao Shui sighed. Mu Yu had always helped her. She didn't want to lie to Mu Yu, but she had no other choice. Even when she saw Mu Yu again, she felt extremely guilty. He is a human and I am a demon. How could he help me? Qiao Shui stopped thinking about Mu Yu. She could only rely on her own strength to save herself. Qiao Shui, leave now. Leave the second layer of heaven and avenge us. White Ape Demon King's 7 orifices began to bleed. His veins also began to bulge. The blood ball on his head kept on rolling, tearing his soul more and more. You will destroy my puppet like this. Sai Wusheng frowned. I know what I am doing. Gui Xuanyue's figure turned and left an afterimage in the air. When he appeared again, he was already in front of Qiao Shui. His hand reached for Qiao Shui's neck. Qiao Shui's water spirit rose again. The mist shook the sky and Gui Xuanyue's hands were pushed back. Little girl, where do you think you're going? Sai Wusheng's figure appeared behind Qiao Shui in a blink of an eye. His fingernails glowed with cold light as he aimed for Xiao Shue's head. I will avenge them. Xiao Shue's face showed a trace of resoluteness. She then merged with the water spirit. The blue water spirit turned into a curtain of water and dispersed. The water droplets poured down in the air, but they didn't fall to the ground. Instead, they gradually turned into bone-piercing ice crystals. Whoosh! Countless ice shards shot out from the ice crystals. They were as thin as cow hair and shot towards the two. Snowflakes floated in the sky. They were crystal clear and emitted a chilling aura. This is Xue Yumeng's ability. How did you get it? Gui Shenyu was wrapped in ghost energy and blocked all the snowflakes. Xiao Shui was nowhere to be seen. However, she couldn't escape from the possession formation. She could only hide somewhere and wait for an opportunity to strike. Sai Wusheng cracked his knuckles. He tilted his head and said, "There is a legend in the 3 continents. Do you remember? There are 5 people who have Yumeng's ability. They will control the battle between the human race and Yumeng." Gui Shenyu nodded slightly. I always thought that legends were just legends. In fact, Gui Shenyu already knew that the legend was true. Back in the Moyun mountain range, his twin died at the hands of Mu Yu, who could control plants. Do you believe in her? I only believe in myself. Gui Shenyu snickered. The ghost energy in the sky flew towards all the snowflakes. Once the ghost energy touched the snowflakes melted and turned back into water droplets. However, the water droplets were no longer pure. Instead, they were wrapped in a trace of black energy. Xiao Shui fell out of the water droplets. She didn't expect the cultivation technique of the Gate of Hell to be so evil. It actually contaminated all her water droplets. The contaminated water droplets were no longer under her control. This was the second heaven. Just like Mu Yu, she couldn't control the water in the second heaven. Even though the sea was her battlefield, she couldn't control the water in the second heaven. I wonder if I can also control water after I refine her into a puppet. Sai Wusheng licked his lips and rushed towards Xiao Shui like lightning. Xiao Shui's water droplets condensed again. Torrents of water poured down from the water droplets and turned into water dragons that rolled towards the two. However, Gui Xuanyue's ghost energy seemed to be the nemesis of water. Wherever the ghost energy went, her water dragons would turn into nothingness. Xiao Shui was having a hard time. She could tell that Gui Shenyu hadn't used her full strength. She didn't even use her twins. Due to the restriction of their cultivation techniques, she couldn't fight back at all. Not to mention, there was also a zombie-like Sai Wusheng coldly watching from the side. Prepare to die. Gui Xuanyue's cold face appeared in front of Xiao Shui. The ghost energy had already enveloped Xiao Shui. Xiao Shui couldn't escape at all. She could only watch as the endless ghost energy covered her body. I can't die. Xiao Shui had already fallen into deep despair. The ghost energy was so terrifying that she couldn't fight back at all. She hated herself. Why couldn't she protect the demon race and the white ape demon king? Her eyes suddenly lit up with blue light. The power in her body also went berserk. That power didn't belong to her, but it was her last resort. Resuscitation of Spirit Lord Xue Yumeng's power. Resuscitation of Spirit Lord Xue Yumeng's power meant that her consciousness would be taken away. However, she had no other choice. In this situation, only Spirit Lord Xue Yumeng's power could help her. However, at this moment, an endless stream of sword qi streaked past her. Like a ray of light in the darkness, it tore apart the curtain of death. The ghost energy on Xiao Shui's body quickly retreated like snow melting away. At the same time, it also woke Xiao Shui up and suppressed the berserk power in her body. Killing your own kind is already a heinous crime. You actually have the face to say that you're cleaning up the house for the human race? Mu Yu's voice was mixed with a trace of anger. His figure slowly appeared beside Xiao Shui. It's you. Xiao Shui was startled. It really was him. Chapter 252. What are you doing here? Xiao Shui looked at Mu Yu's sturdy back, and her heart felt as if it had been knocked by someone. She was so happy. She had been thinking about Mu Yu just now, and now that Mu Yu had appeared here, whether it was a coincidence or not, Xiao Shui no longer cared. In her eyes, Mu Yu seemed so tall at that moment, occupying her heart and making her feel emotional. But soon, the expression on Xiao Shui's face dimmed again. She was a member of the monster race. Although she wasn't a monster, she couldn't get away from the monster race. But Mu Yu was a member of the human race. They stood on different sides, so why would he help her? I told you to be careful, why didn't you listen? You need me to help you every time. I'm so tired. Mu Yu helplessly glanced at Xiao Shui. He wanted to find the weakness of the 9 seizing formations and break it, so that the White Ape Monster King wouldn't be suppressed. This way, the White Ape Monster King would be able to deal with these 2 monsters, and he wouldn't have to do anything. But before he could break the 9 seizing formations, Xiao Shui was about to die. He had no choice but to rush into the 9 seizing formations to save her. It didn't matter to Mu Yu whether Xiao Shui was a monster race or not. He didn't have much prejudice against the monster race. No matter what, he wouldn't watch anything happen to Xiao Shui. Besides, the people from the Gate of Hell were full of evil. They had killed countless people for their own selfish reasons. Such scum of the human race shouldn't exist in this world. How could he just stand by and watch? I remember you. You are that pitiful ant from back then. Gui Xuanyue's face sank. He recognized Mu Yu. He would never forget how Mu Yu had destroyed his twins. If he hadn't run fast enough, he probably wouldn't have been able to escape death. He didn't expect to see him in the 2nd layer of heaven. Mu Yu was nothing in front of him back then. He could even toy with him at will. But in the blink of an eye, this kid actually had the cultivation of the original soul stage. Looking at his inner chi, it was extraordinary and gave him an indescribable sense of threat, which really surprised him. Gui Shenyu, I've already destroyed your twin back then. I'm very curious, who is your twin now? The shadow sword chi in Mu Yu's hand swept out and pointed at Gui Shenyu. Back in the Moyun mountain range, Gui Shenyu had overestimated himself and allowed the true god of the 3 continents to shatter his body with a single sword strike. As a result, his twin came back to life and took the initiative in Gui Xuanyue's place. But then, Mu Yu, who had lost control, killed his twin and severely injured Gui Shenyu. Without twins, Gui Shenyu was not worthy of being called a disciple of the Gate of Hell. Gui Xuanyue's face suddenly became extremely ferocious and terrifying, mixed with extreme resentment. Mu Yu's words seemed to have reminded him of his painful past, and his whole face became distorted with anger. Do you want to know who my twin is? Gui Xuanyue's whole body shook, and a shadow flew out of his body. This shadow was extremely thin and old. He had white hair and a white beard, which made him look like an old man. Both his clothes and his aura showed that he used to be a person who lived like a prince, but now he was Gui Xuanyue's twin. The moment he saw the twin, Mu Yu was stunned. Mu Yu knew this old man. He was the head of the famous Zhouhua school in the Moyun mountain range. He was the immortal Zhouhua, who was respected by thousands of people in the Moyun mountain range and was on an equal footing with the Qingsong Taoists. He was also Gui Xuanyue's biological father. You actually made your father a twin? Mu Yu opened his mouth wide in shock. The immortal Zhouhua, who was known as one of the 2 giants together with the Qingsong Taoist in the Moyun mountain range, had actually become his son's twin. Gui Xuanyue's eyes flashed fiercely. Thanks to you, I failed my mission and escaped back with only my soul. My master was furious and punished me severely. I had to find another soul to become my twin, but the conditions for becoming a twin were very strict. One had to understand the other's words and actions very well, and they had to be telepathic. The only one who met these conditions was my father. So you killed your father? Mu Yu felt that sometimes people's hearts were really scary. How could Gui Shenyu kill his own father, which was such a disgraceful thing? Yes. I killed my father. I cut my father's neck with my own hands, extracted his soul, and refined him into my twin. Every time I see my twin, I feel extremely resentful. It's all because of you. Today, I will avenge my father. Gui Shenyu looked at Mu Yu hysterically. His eyes turned blood red, and he wanted to tear Mu Yu into pieces. A dense ghost fog rose from his body and swept toward Mu Yu. Mu Yu shook his head slightly. He found it ridiculous that Gui Shenyu blamed his father's death on Mu Yu. It was really unreasonable. You people from the Gate of Hell are really crazy. You can do anything. But if you want revenge, you should kill yourself. If you can't do it, then let me help you. The shadow clone sword turned into an arc of light and met the monstrous ghost fog. The immortal Zhouhua's eyes were empty, but his movements were not rusty because he had become a soul. He held the Zhouhua sword in his hand. Except for his consciousness being sealed by his son, his swordsmanship was still as good as before. Clang! In the blink of an eye, Mu Yu and the immortal Zhouhua had exchanged hundreds of blows. The sword qi swept up the ghost fog and scattered the resentful spirits. The sword qi surged, and spiritual qi leaked everywhere. The ghost streamer in Gui Xuanyue's hand was like a bannerman. The wind blew wildly, and countless evil spirits poured out of the nest. On the other side, Qiao Shui was fighting with Sai Wusheng. Qiao Shui's cultivation was not bad. Gui Xuanyue's technique restrained her, but Sai Wusheng's technique did not affect her. In addition, the death of her companion stimulated her. She used the ability of the water spirit to the fullest. With the help of the water droplets in the sky, she fought Sai Wusheng. Sai Wusheng finally summoned his twin puppets. The violent Qiao Shui made him feel a little pressured. Die. Wherever the ghost streamer's evil spirits went, frost would spread, and all the life and death of the plants would be sucked away. His cultivation was much higher than Gui Dao's, so Mu Yu did not dare to be careless. However, the ghost fog was still a ghost fog. Its natural enemy was Mu Ling, who was full of vitality. Mu Ling met Perfected Zhouhua's sword head-on. As expected, Perfected Zhouhua's sword was instantly cut in half by Mu Ling. The surrounding ghost fog was also absorbed by Mu Ling. Perfected Zhouhua was much more intelligent than Gui Dao's twin puppets. He immediately returned to Gui Xuanyue's side and did not fight Mu Ling head-on. I didn't expect you to have such a cultivation after not seeing you for a few years. Gui Shenyu and Perfected Zhouhua spread out and attacked Mu Yu from both sides. Thousands of evil spirits pounced over. With so many evil spirits, it was unknown how many people had died in Gui Xuanyue's hand. Moreover, this was only a single disciple of the Netherworld sect. Most likely, every single disciple of the Netherworld sect had their hands stained with hundreds of human lives. This kind of slaughtering method was not inferior to that of the Yumeng Devil clan. With these evil spirits in your hands, aren't you afraid of having nightmares when you sleep at night? An endless stream of sword energy swept out from the wood spirit, eroding the cold ghost mist. Wherever the wood spirit went, all the evil spirits and resentful spirits were devoured. The power of the ghost Ganfalan was getting weaker and weaker. Gui Shenyu was also getting more and more shocked. He remembered the scene when Mu Yu mutated. He suddenly remembered Mu Yu's identity. You are the same as that woman. You also have control. Some words need not be said. Mu Ling's sword devoured all the ghost fog and went straight for the ghost Ganfalan. The evil ghost Ganfalan was touched by Mu Ling lightly and melted like mud. It turned into black fragments and disappeared into the holes on Mu Ling's body. I don't believe it. Gui Xuanyue's magic treasure had already been destroyed. He watched in horror as Mu Ling came for his chest. He wanted to dodge but found that his body's aura was locked by Mu Ling and he could not break free. His face hardened and his hands moved continuously. Perfected Zhouhua was already in front of him. In order to survive, he wanted his own father to die for him. Mu Yu sighed. He felt sorry for Perfected Zhouhua. He sent his son to the Gate of Hell but did not expect that it would change Gui Xuanyue's nature and turn him into a numb walking corpse. He had even lost the most basic sense of family. Back then, Daoist Zhouhua had helped his son kill so many Aurus core stage self-cultivators for the sake of the soul-searching array. But now, he had also paid the price. He had also become a vengeful soul in his son's hands. Mu Ling's sword passed through Perfected Zhouhua's chest without any hindrance and went straight to Gui Shenyu. Gui Shenyu was wrong. How could Perfected Zhouhua, who was in his soul form, block Mu Ling's sword qi? Gui Shenyu became restless, and his pale face instantly turned red. Then, The top of his head broke open, and a shadow rushed out from the top of his head. Gui Shenyu abandoned his body and tried to escape with his soul. However, his wishful thinking failed again. Mu Ling's sword trembled slightly and ripples surged around it. It merged into the void and reappeared above Gui Xuanyue's soul. A terrible suction force came and Gui Xuanyue's soul was sucked into one of the holes on Mu Ling's sword without any resistance. "No, I can't accept this." A desperate voice echoed in the sky. Gui Shenyu had done all kinds of evil. Not only did he reach out to the true gods of the 3 continents, but he also ruthlessly killed his own father and refined him into a twin. Such an inhumane guy should not exist in this world. However, even though Gui Shenyu had fallen, there were still countless Gui Shenyu in the gate of hell. The existence of these people had tarnished the true meaning of life. They were like malignant tumors in the human race. When could they be uprooted? Perfected Zhouhua's eyes gradually regained a trace of clarity. Gui Shenyu had lost his body, so the twins would awaken. Perfected Zhouhua's consciousness returned to his body. He looked down at his chest that had been pierced by Mu Ling's sword and could not heal. Then, his eyes fell on his son who was lying on the ground. He suddenly sighed heavily. "You killed my son." When Perfected Zhouhua saw Mu Yu, he was not surprised at all. His voice was extremely bitter. He had never expected that on that day, his most trusted son would brandish a butcher's knife at him. He did it so decisively, so firmly, without a trace of hesitation. That day, he covered his bleeding neck and asked with difficulty why. However, what greeted him was only his son's fierce gaze. He knew that he was a failure as a father. He had pushed his son into the abyss, causing him to be doomed eternally. He had also dragged himself into hell. "Do you want to avenge him?" Mu Yu asked indifferently. No matter how much Perfected Zhouhua had helped the villain, he was still a father. A father who had been killed by his own son. Mu Yu felt compassion. He would not save Perfected Zhouhua, but he would not add insult to injury either. Perfected Zhouhua shook his head. "Karma. I brought it upon myself. I don't hate you, nor do I hate him. I hate myself. Thank you for freeing me and freeing my son." Perfected Zhouhua's face revealed a smile. The moment his son brandished the butcher's knife at him, he understood that everything was his fault. Now, he could finally leave in peace. He did not have to be a tool in his son's hands. For him, it was indeed a kind of relief. His soul began to crack. When the wind blew, it turned into thousands of pieces and gradually disappeared from the world. "Little commander, where do you think people go after they die?" Mu Yu looked at the sky. What was beyond the sky? When he was young, Grandpa Village Chief often said that people would turn into stars in the sky after they died. Did those who died go to the sky? Mu Yu had never flown out of the sky. Because the sky was very high, it was impossible to fly out. If people had a home after they died, then would Perfected Zhouhua see his son again? How would his son face Perfected Zhouhua? Chapter 253. Mu Yu retrieved the inner core from Gui Xuanyue's body and turned to look at the White Ape Demon King. With Gui Xuanyue's death, the 9 possession arrays could no longer be maintained. The White Ape Demon King struggled to stand up. He panted heavily and glanced at the Demon King's inner core in Mu Yu's hand. At this moment, the White Ape Monster King's vitality had been greatly damaged. He could not even muster the slightest bit of strength. He could only watch helplessly as Mu Yu received the Niden. Xiao Shui and Sai Wusheng were locked in battle. Sai Wusheng controlled his twin puppets to gain a slight advantage. However, when he saw that Gui Shenyu was killed by Mu Yu and that Mu Yu was coming toward him, he was shocked and retreated. "You can kill Gui Shenyu?" Sai Wusheng could not believe it. If it were him, he would not be able to defeat Gui Shenyu easily. However, this young man in front of him could do it. Did this mean that if Mu Yu and Xiao Shui joined forces, he would not be able to fight back at all? Mu Yu killed Gui Shenyu mainly because of his cultivation method. Sai Wusheng did not know this and did not intend to reveal it. At this moment, waves of mournful red mist rolled in from afar and landed beside Gui Shenyu. Gui Hongyu, who was at the gate of hell, saw Gui Shenyu lying on the ground and her expression changed drastically. She stared at Mu Yu. However, a few figures came over and the place suddenly became lively. Other than Gui Hongyu, there were 4 other young humans. The 4 of them were dressed differently and their auras were calm and reserved. They were definitely not ordinary people. Mu Yu only knew one of them. It was Lian Tianyu, who was known as the #1 young disciple in the Danding sect. The other 3 were Duan Musai from the Shenling sect, Fairy Miao Yu from the Red Dust sect, and a bald monk named Ji Zhen from the White Moon Temple. It seems that all of you are here for the White Ape Demon King. Lian Tianyu looked around and frowned slightly when he saw the corpses of the demon clan all over the ground. He understood that there must have been a cruel battle here. Seeing the demonic beasts die, even if they didn't like demonic beasts, they couldn't bear to watch. Sai Wusheng sneered, "I've heard a lot about you, the eldest disciple of the Danding school, Lian Tianyu. You're a dragon among men. What brings you here today? Save the pleasantries for later. How can the Gate of Life and Death and the Gate of Hell decide on the White Ape Demon King's matter?" A young man in green behind Lian Tianyu coldly said. This person's name was Duan Musai, and he came from the Shenling sect, one of the 8 sects. His cultivation was also very powerful, and he was a genius disciple of the Shenling sect. Sai Wusheng put away his hypocritical smile and said calmly, "It doesn't matter if I can make the decision or not. However, our human race has 2 traitors. How do you want to deal with them?" "Are you saying that Gui Shenyu and you are traitors?" Mu Yu mocked. Sai Wusheng's face was stiff and expressionless. "In order to save the White Ape Demon King, you killed Gui Shenyu with this human girl. Did I wrong you? Mu Yu, you killed Gui Shenyu?" Lian Tianyu was slightly surprised. It was too difficult for alchemists like them to kill a genius of the same level, let alone someone from the Gate of Hell, who was recognized as the most difficult to deal with in the cultivation world. Mu Yu seemed to always be able to create miracles. However, whether Gui Shenyu had bad intentions or not, he was still a human. If Mu Yu really killed Gui Shenyu for the sake of the White Ape Demon King, then it would be hard to justify. When the 2 words Mu Yu came out of Lian Tianyu's mouth, everyone was shocked. Even Sai Wusheng's eyes widened. Obviously, he only just realized that this person was Mu Yu. As a rising star of the Danding sect, Mu Yu was able to fuse with an incomplete 7th grade pill. This kind of heaven-defying ability had long been known by the other sects. However, in the end, Mu Yu was only an alchemist. How could he kill Gui Shenyu, who had strange means? Just now, Sai Wusheng was entangled by Qiao Shui, so he didn't see how Mu Yu killed Gui Shenyu. Now that he thought about it, even he felt that it was a little inconceivable. Qiao Shui had already protected the White Ape Demon King. Sai Wusheng was already difficult enough to deal with, and now there were so many people coming. The worst was Mu Yu. Because he helped her, he couldn't explain himself. "You say I'm a traitor, so I'm a traitor? Gui Shenyu wanted to kill me, so can't I just defend myself? How can I help the Demon King?" Mu Yu didn't panic at all. Sai Wusheng chuckled, "If that's the case, why don't you capture this traitor woman and prove your innocence?" Gui Xuanyue's death didn't hurt Sai Wusheng. To be honest, the people from the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death didn't get along well. He hoped that Gui Shenyu would die so that he would have one less opponent. He couldn't accuse Mu Yu of defending himself, but he could see that Mu Yu and Qiao Shui knew each other, so he said such words. "I'll capture her. If I capture her, the Demon King will be mine." Mu Yu smiled. "Yes. The old macaque will be ours." Xiao Shui also popped his head out and snorted. Then, he thought of something and whispered, "The old macaque is too powerful. It's useless to give him to us. We just need to get the candy." The White Ape Demon King doesn't belong to anyone. His punishment must be decided by everyone, Sai Wusheng said. Mu Yu slowly shook his head. "If that's the case, why do you want me to do it alone? Why don't you just stand by and watch?" "Good. Fellow Taoists, why don't we capture the White Ape Demon King together and bring him back to the third heaven?" Sai Wusheng cupped his hands and said to the others, "Cut the crap. Capture the Demon King first." Whoever dares to stop us will be a traitor to the human race. Duanmu Sai shouted and took the initiative to attack Qiao Shui. The others didn't stay idle either. They all gathered their magic weapons and prepared to capture the White Ape Demon King first. Mu Yu didn't move. He stood in place and looked at Qiao Shui with a complicated expression. He had done his best. He killed Gui Shenyu and stopped the plan of the Gate of Hell. Even the arrival of Tianyu and the others made him unable to help Qiao Shui. Gui Hongyu glared at Mu Yu angrily. She didn't expect that her senior brother would die at the hands of Mu Yu. If Gui Shenyu didn't succeed in obtaining the White Ape Demon King's inner core, then the heavy responsibility would naturally fall on her. She shouted and followed with the red mist that filled the sky, ready to fish in troubled waters. Qiao Shui's face turned as white as a sheet of paper. Her water manipulation technique wasn't enough to defeat the disciples of the Gate of Hell, but it wasn't enough to defeat Sai Wusheng. However, with so many people rushing towards her, she couldn't escape even if she had 3 heads and 6 arms. Qiao Shui's heart sank once more. Through the silhouette, she could see the helplessness on Mu Yu's face. She knew that Mu Yu couldn't do anything for her anymore, and she could only rely on herself. "Thank you." Qiao Shui opened her mouth to Mu Yu. Although she didn't make a sound, her meaning was clearly conveyed to Mu Yu. Snowflakes fluttered in the sky and the ground was covered in layers of frost. Qiao Shui's water spirit rippled in the air. Then, all the snowflakes turned into raindrops and fell unceasingly. A pleasant sound came from afar. 2 beautiful flying fishes rushed out of Qiao Shui's body and happily soared in the rain. Mu Yu was startled. Why would these 2 beautiful creatures that killed without blinking an eye follow Qiao Shui? The appearance of the flying fishes caused everyone's movements to slow down. The 2 beautiful creatures sang loudly and the raindrops in the air suddenly became sticky. Everyone felt as if they were in a paste. Blue electric arcs began to flicker in the rain, covering Lian Tianyu and the others. Water god demon Ying Yu, the overlord of the water. Everyone, use your spirit energy to protect yourselves. Don't let the rain touch you. Duanmu Sai was an experienced and knowledgeable person. He recognized the 2 beautiful creatures and knew how terrifying the water god demon Ying Yu was. He immediately warned everyone. Everyone was covered in a layer of spirit energy shield, and they charged at Qiao Shui without hesitation. The water god demon Ying Yu's lightning turned into blue light that snaked around and trapped everyone. For a moment, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, blocking Lian Tianyu's group's advance. Countless bolts of lightning struck everyone's body, causing everyone to tremble in fear. Lian Tianyu asked, "How are we going to deal with these 2 water god demons?" Duanmu Sai said, "Ghost Qi or filthy Qi. The water god demon Ying Yu doesn't like filthy water. Their abilities will be greatly reduced in filthy water." Everyone instantly thought of the Gaol sect's disciple and their gazes fell on Gui Hongyu. Gui Hongyu did not say anything and a monstrous red mist spread out. The ghastly ghost Qi instantly dyed all the water droplets that Qiao Shui had transformed into red. The water god demon Ying Yu anxiously cried out and charged into Qiao Shui's body. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared from Qiao Shui's body. No wonder Qiao Shui didn't summon the water god demon Ying Yu from the start. It turns out that the cultivation method of the Gate of Hell is the nemesis of the water god demon Ying Yu. Qiao Shui's face turned pale again. She furiously roared and the raindrops turned into icicles. However, they didn't hit anyone. Instead, Qiao Shui vomited a mouthful of blood and staggered 2 steps. She had fought with Gui Shenyu at the beginning and was injured by him. Then, she fought with Sai Wusheng. At this moment, most of the spiritual energy in her body had been consumed. She could no longer control the water. "Why aren't you surrendering?" Sai Wusheng's sharp claws were already reaching for Qiao Shui. "Even if I die, I won't let you hurt the Demon King." Qiao Shui suddenly roared towards the sky in pain. She suddenly opened her eyes. Her eyes were suffused with blue light. Her body began to tremble. A terrifying fluctuation slowly spread out from her body. The area within a radius of 100 li was instantly frozen. All the living creatures were turned into ice pillars in an instant. Mu Yu clenched his fist. How could he not know where Xiao Shue's aura came from? Just like him, Xiao Shue also had Spirit Lord Yu Meng's ability hidden in her body. The energy that Spirit Lord Yu Meng had hidden in her body had been waiting for the best opportunity to seize control of her body. When Xiao Shue fell into that kind of unconscious impulse, she would be faced with endless darkness. Swoosh! Mu Yu rushed over. He couldn't just watch Xiao Shue be controlled by human's power. He knew very well what Spirit Lord Yu Meng's power meant to them. It was the thirst for blood, the hatred for cultivators, and the desire to slaughter. It would replace their consciousness and turn them into killing puppets. Mu Yu had already experienced his own power. He knew that if Xiao Shue went berserk, her terrifying ability wouldn't be any weaker than his. Ding! The shadow clone sword met with Lian Tianyu and the others who were attacking Xiao Shue. A powerful sword chi swept out. Thousands of sword shadows were as cold as autumn water. They were fierce and domineering, instantly repelling everyone. The few of you are besieging a woman. How awe-inspiring. Mu Yu's voice was mixed with anger. Mu Yu, are you really in cahoots with this demon race woman? Lian Tianyu furiously roared. However, everyone couldn't help but feel shocked in their hearts. Mu Yu was actually able to repel the 5 of them by himself. This was already an inconceivable matter. I've already said that he is the same as this woman. They are both traitors of the human race. They want to help the White Ape Demon King escape. Sai Wusheng sinisterly stroked his nails. His eyes were cold and threatening. Chapter 254. The water droplets that filled the sky were still in a frenzy. The water droplets that were tainted by Gui Hongyu's red mist suddenly froze, and then the ghostly mist was forcibly extinguished. Monstrous waves began to rise in the sea not far away, raging against the shore. However, the tide did not recede, but slowly rose to the sky. Resuscitation of the frenzied power in Xiao Shue's body. This power actually began to draw the seawater of the second layer of heaven, and it had reached a terrifying level. A strange atmosphere swept over, and no one knew where this atmosphere came from. Everyone only felt that the deepest part of their hearts seemed to be stirred by something, and suddenly became melancholy. Many sad, and even desperate and angry memories began to surge into their minds. What kind of ability is this? Duan Musai's face was filled with grief. At this moment, his mind was filled with the sad memories that he had been suppressing and not thinking about, but it was useless. Everyone had their own emotions, and this was unavoidable. The more he did not want to think about it, the clearer that memory became. When cultivators fought with others, the biggest taboo was an unstable state of mind. Once one state of mind was controlled by someone else, it would be very difficult for them to exert their full strength. Sai Wusheng's face was still very stiff. He was originally a person without sorrow or joy. He had no love, no sadness, and no joy. However, at this moment, he was filled with endless resentment. It was a kind of resentment that could not be hidden, and it was a resentment that wanted to drive him crazy. Gui Hongyu actually shed tears unknowingly, as if she had recalled some sad past. The red mist around her body involuntarily dispersed. Fairy Miao Yu of the Red Dust Sect was chuckling as she sank into some kind of happy memory, and her eyes were full of ambiguity. Among the 5 Spirit Lords Yu Meng, Spirit Lord Shui Yu Meng's ability, Death of Love. Only monk Ji Zhan of the White Moon Temple recited the name of Buddha, and there was no extra emotion on his face. Most of the disciples of the White Moon Temple had a firm mind, and they had seen through the world of mortals. They were not happy with material gains or sad for themselves. Thus, he could barely resist Spirit Lord Shui Yu Meng's ability. Spirit Lord Shui Yu Meng's ability, Death of Love. Sentimental like water, controlling emotions, could mobilize everyone's emotions and magnify them infinitely. Regardless of whether it was sadness, joy, despair, or hesitation, it could cause a person to fall into a certain emotion and be unable to extricate themselves, thus killing everyone. Resuscitation. Then, no one present would even have the chance to crush the jade pendant. The human race was an emotional race. They had love and hate, sadness and joy, despair and fear, but also joy and joy. Death of love was like life and death in the blink of an eye. It had a terrifying lethality. To the emotional human race, it was a deadly weapon. Fortunately, only the 5 spirit lords human possessed this ability. If all the human possessed this ability, the human race would not be a match for the human. You stupid human brats, do you really want to die? White Ape Monster King's face also revealed a trace of fear. He didn't seem to be affected by the death of love, but the 9 arrays of possession had left him extremely weak. Without fusing with his Niden, he wouldn't be able to survive in front of Xiao Shue's berserk strength. Xiao Shue, don't. Mu Yu had once cultivated the supreme falling dust mental cultivation technique, which allowed him to maintain a calm heart at all times. It was also because of this mental cultivation technique that he was able to resist the death of love ability that had yet to be completely resuscitated. His figure was already close to Xiao Shue, and an endless amount of life force surged out from his body, covering Xiao Shue. If Xiao Shue fell into the endless power, the evil consciousness in her body would awaken. Then, the second layer of heaven would most likely be controlled by Spirit Lord Shui Yuman. At that time, Spirit Lord Shui Yuman would borrow Xiao Shue's body to return to the third layer of heaven, and it would definitely cause a huge disaster. Mu Yu had to stop Xiao Shue before the power in her body awakened. Otherwise, once Xiao Shue completely lost control, Mu Yu could only rely on the power of Spirit Lord Shui Yuman to contend against her. But once the two of them fell into a state of bloodlust, no one in the second layer of heaven would be able to awaken them. They would become the terrifying demon kings of the second layer of heaven. Mu Yu hugged Xiao Shue in his arms, and an endless amount of life force invaded Xiao Shue's body. Taking advantage of the fact that Spirit Lord Shui Yuman's power was still restless, he forcefully suppressed the rampaging power in Xiao Shue's body. A trace of clarity appeared in Xiao Shue's eyes. She saw Mu Yu hugging her, and her eyes were blurred. Why? Why are you helping me? Xiao Shue murmured. The surrounding water droplets splashed down again, and the distant tide also fell back into the sea. It was as if a mountain had collapsed, and it was deafening. At the same time, it also awakened everyone from their respective emotions. Everyone looked at each other as if they had just survived a calamity, and their hearts were palpitating. I can't tell you now. Mu Yu didn't want White Ape Demon King to know about his ability. With a wave of his hand, he grabbed White Ape Demon King and pulled him in front of him. He grabbed White Ape Demon King's clothes, and then fled with the two of them. The others were still in a state of extreme shock. They didn't understand why Mu Yu wasn't affected by the love war. However, when they saw him fleeing with White Ape Demon King, they immediately reacted and chased after him. Stop right there. Duan Musai's figure was the fastest, and the others followed closely behind. Mu Yu's speed wasn't slow either. He executed the falling dust steps to the extreme, and gradually widened the distance between them. However, he understood that the young men and women behind him were all ordinary people. Their cultivation wasn't weaker than his, and it wouldn't be difficult for them to catch up with him. Not to mention that he was carrying 2 burdens, and one of them was the old ape who was throwing a tantrum. Stinking brat, what are you trying to do? Let go of me. White Ape Demon King roared angrily. It was the first time he was being held like a chick. As an awe-inspiring king of the monster race, he was actually rudely grabbed by Mu Yu. Needless to say, he felt insulted. Let go of you. If you want to die in the hands of those people, I don't care. Mu Yu really wanted to leave the White Ape Demon King behind. However, seeing how Xiao Shue was willing to risk her life to protect the White Ape Demon King, if she were to save Xiao Shue, she might go back to look for the White Ape Demon King. That's right. Old macaque, what are you shouting for? You can't even move now, what else do you want to do? Little Handsome snorted. Before White Ape Demon King escaped, Little Handsome was fearless. After White Ape Demon King escaped, he was frightened by White Ape Demon King's brute force. Without stopping, he went back into Mu Yu's clothes. Now that White Ape Demon King was weakened by the people from the Gate of Hell, Little Handsome came out to show off again. It was a classic example of bullying the weak and fearing the strong. You little rat, I'm going to eat you. White Ape Demon King was about to explode. I'm afraid you'll have indigestion. Little Handsome made a face. Benefactor Mu Yu, please forgive me. You shouldn't have helped the Evile door. Monk Zhizhen of the White Moon Temple stepped on a Vajra pestle and turned into a golden light. He overtook Mu Yu and intercepted Mu Yu. Monk Zhizhen was also in the 9th firmament of the nascent soul stage. If they really fought, Mu Yu would have a hard time winning. Damn it, this is the only way. Mu Yu took Qiao Shui to the right to buy some time. He directly shoved the teleportation Jade Pendant and Demon King inner core into White Ape Demon King's hands and said, "Crush the Jade Pendant and leave the 2nd firmament with Qiao Shui. Once you get out, immediately fuse with the inner core and recover your cultivation. I think you'll be able to escape the Pill Cauldron sect with your cultivation. Remember, other than the gates of life and death and the gate of hell, you're not allowed to hurt anyone else in the Pill Cauldron sect. This is my bottom line. The teleportation Jade Pendant could only hold one nascent soul stage cultivator at most." White Ape Demon King didn't have any cultivation, so he didn't count. The teleportation Jade Pendant was more than enough to take him and Qiao Shui out. Mu Yu couldn't escape with Qiao Shui and White Ape Demon King from the hands of those human youths. They would soon catch up. In order to not let anything happen to Qiao Shui, Mu Yu could only use this method. "What right do you have to order me around?" White Ape Demon King was so angry that his white hair stood on end. If he still had the strength, he would have already beaten him up. "I don't know why Qiao Shui risked her life to save you, but if you still have a conscience, remember my words." Mu Yu didn't like the White Ape Demon King. If it wasn't for the fact that the White Ape Demon King could protect Qiao Shui and escape, he wouldn't have even bothered to care about the White Ape Demon King. He would have directly thrown the White Ape Demon King to the human youths to do whatever they wanted with him. "Then how are you going to get out?" Qiao Shui grabbed Mu Yu's hand and asked weakly. Mu Yu shook his head and said, "From the moment I helped you, I couldn't get out. The Pill Cauldron School and the other sects won't let me go. I'm afraid I'll be executed as a traitor to the human race. Your monster race's teleportation array might be able to carry me." Mu Yu had thought about it. The monster race's teleportation array was on a nearby island. If it could transport Qiao Shui, then it should also be effective for him. "Take this and go find our teleportation array. It's on that island." Qiao Shui wrapped the water spirit in Mu Yu's hand and said, "I'll wait for you." Qiao Shui's last 3 words were spoken so anxiously and worriedly, as if she was about to part with Junlang forever. Mu Yu could hear a different meaning in her words. He recalled the prank phantom played on Mu Yu. In the dream phantom arranged for Mu Yu, Qiao Shui actually fell in love with him. Mu Yu had always found this matter very funny. They had only met by chance, so wasn't it too ridiculous to say that she liked him? Mu Yu's eyes turned, as if he had thought of something, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. "Do you want to know why I helped you? Because you said you liked me in the dream. Don't say I didn't give you a chance." Mu Yu shook the water spirit and said, "Is this a token of love?" Qiao Shui let go of Mu Yu in a daze. A certain soft place in her heart was touched, and she felt as if she had been electrocuted. She was just about to ask Mu Yu what he meant by this, but Mu Yu had already let Qiao Shui grab White Ape Demon King's hand. Then, he flicked his spiritual energy and hit the teleportation jade in White Ape Demon King's hand. Under White Ape Demon King's strange gaze, ripples appeared in the air, and a huge tearing force directly pulled the two of them up. Then, a white light flashed, and White Ape Demon King and Qiao Shui disappeared into the void. "You actually let White Ape Demon King escape." Lian Tianyou's voice came from behind. They had been chasing after Mu Yu. When Mu Yu gave his teleportation jade to Qiao Shui, everyone saw it. Chapter 255. The sky of the 2nd layer of heaven was still very clear. All the heaven's prides from the major sects were staring at Mu Yu. They couldn't understand Mu Yu's actions. "Benefactor Mu Yu, have you been bewitched by the demon race woman? Otherwise, why would you give them the teleportation jade pendant?" Monk Zhizhen chanted Buddha's name and asked. "You can think whatever you want." Mu Yu was too lazy to explain. At this moment, no one would believe his words. "Do you know the consequences of letting the demon race go?" Lian Tianyu asked in disbelief. They didn't hear the conversation between Mu Yu and Xiao Shui. Everything happened too fast. They couldn't stop the White Ape Demon King from leaving. However, they knew that the White Ape Demon King and Xiao Shui relied on Mu Yu's teleportation jade pendant to leave this place. This meant that Mu Yu couldn't leave by himself. Mu Yu shrugged his shoulders and said, "Anyway, I don't have the teleportation jade pendant anymore. Do you still need to ask what the consequences are?" Mu Yu didn't have anything to fear now. Xiao Shui and the White Ape Demon King had left. Without the burden, if he really fought with these people, it was hard to say who would win. Lian Tianyu looked meaningfully at Mu Yu. After a long time, he sighed and said, "It's a pity. I wanted to discuss alchemy with you. It seems that I won't have the chance now." Lian Tianyu was the #1 genius among the young disciples of the Danding school. His alchemy skills had already reached perfection. However, Mu Yu suddenly appeared and overshadowed his name in the blink of an eye. At that time, he was preparing to enter the second layer of heaven. Therefore, he didn't go to see Mu Yu's alchemy skills. However, most geniuses were arrogant. They always wanted to learn from each other. "If you want to stay with me, I don't have any objections." Mu Yu and Lian Tianyu didn't have much interaction. He had been in the Pill Cauldron School for so long, but he had only seen him once when he was about to enter the transmission array. He and Lian Tianyu didn't have any kind of friendship to speak of. "Take care of yourself." Even Tianyu took out his teleportation jade pendant. The White Ape Demon King had used the human race's teleportation array to leave the second layer of heaven and return to the Alchemy Cauldron School. Tianyu had to hurry back to help. He also had to tell everyone the news. A huge tearing force came, and then with a flash, Lian Tianyu disappeared into the void. "What about you guys? Do you want to fight with me before you leave?" Mu Yu glanced at the others, and a smile appeared on his face. Sai Wusheng's joints creaked again. He said miserably, "There's no need for that. The second celestial layer demonic beasts will treat you well on our behalf." The others also looked at Mu Yu with unfriendly gazes, but they did not stay any longer. Mu Yu had lost his teleportation jade pendant. In their eyes, he was already a dead man. There was no need to make a move. Now that the White Ape Demon King had rushed out of the second layer of heaven, they also wanted to check out the situation. Gui Hongyu had already turned back to Gui Xuanyue's corpse. She wanted to bring it back. Mu Yu did not intend to snatch Gui Xuanyue's teleportation jade pendant. If he really returned to the Alchemy Cauldron School, he was afraid that he would not be able to leave. He could only choose to believe that the demon race's teleportation array could take him back. As long as he could return and deliver the 9 Qi soul cleansing flower and underworld grass to his master, he would not have to worry about anything. If his master could recover his cultivation, would he still be afraid of the entire cultivation world coming to suppress him? Array patterns fluctuated in the air. Finally, only Mu Yu was left on the beach with the scattered corpses of the demon race. The sea breeze blew on Mu Yu's face. There was a trace of saltiness. Stroking the blue Mu Ling, Mu Yu knew that this thing was actually the same as his Mu Ling. It must be a water human. It was a sacred object. But why did Xiao Shui give it to him? Could it allow him to pass through the demon race's teleportation array? Mu Yu looked at the island in the distance. From here, he could only vaguely see a small dot on the island. It would take him at least 6 to 8 hours to reach the island. The sea was boundless and made people feel awe. All kinds of seabirds swept past from time to time. The water sparkled and the sound of waves could be heard. He actually wanted to bring Xiao Shui and the others to the island. However, Monk Xizhen and the others were too fast and did not give him a chance. He did not say anything and directly flew to the demon race's island. He didn't encounter any obstacles on his way to the island. When he got close to the island after spending 8 hours, he found a strong demonic aura surrounding the island. This demon chi did not belong to Wind Eagle and the others. It was very similar to the White Ape Demon King's. It was majestic and filled with demon chi. Could there be another demon king on the island? Mu Yu was puzzled. If there was another demon king on the island, why didn't he personally go and receive the White Ape Demon King? Little Shuai swayed his big tail leisurely and said, "No, this place is different from the White Ape Demon King." "Oh, it's not the old Ape Demon King's level? Then I'm relieved." "Yes. There are a few guys on the island who are more powerful than the White Ape Demon King." When Mu Yu heard this, he almost fell from the flying sword into the sea. He grabbed Little Shuai's tail and asked, "Is there really a Demon King on the island?" "I didn't say there's a Demon King. There are many demon spirits on the island. Countless demon spirits added together are naturally more powerful than the White Ape Demon King." Little Shuai listened for a while and continued, "Those demon spirits seem to be calling for something in a regular pattern." Mu Yu was puzzled. "What are they calling for?" "It's Yoroiro's responsibility to protect the sacred island." "What the hell? They have a slogan?" Mu Yu was astonished. "I don't know. That's what they're shouting. I translated it that way." Little Shuai was truly an honest fellow. Mu Yu frowned. Back in the demon's underground palace, the demon spirits had left a deep impression on him. Now, Little Shuai was saying that there were demon spirits guarding the island. Could this be a trick left behind by a second firmament demon? "Since you have the crappy sword, why don't you just throw it away when the time comes?" Little Shuai was very open-minded. Mu Ling was the nemesis of demon spirits. Back in the demon's underground palace, it was Mu Ling who had dealt with a large number of demon spirits. Little Shuai was right. However, Mu Yu didn't dare let his guard down. As the situation was urgent, Xiao Shui didn't tell him how to use the teleportation array or how the water spirit could help him. He had to figure everything out himself. As he approached the island, a stifling aura gradually enveloped Mu Yu's heart. He could already see the black reefs on the edge of the island. The seabirds had also disappeared, not daring to approach the island. The surging waves created thunderous splashes. As soon as Mu Yu stepped onto the reefs, mysterious ripples appeared in the surrounding air, bouncing him back. Array patterns. Mu Yu wasn't surprised by the appearance of array patterns. The demon's island was so strange that it didn't have an array formation protecting it. He roughly determined the layout of the array formation and had a plan in mind. He pondered about how to enter the array formation. But the more he thought about it, the more surprised he became. The island's protective array formation was extremely large. It was impossible to force his way in. The array formation would directly bounce him back. If he wanted to break the array formation, he had to find the array foundation and array core. It was impossible to find them outside. This made things difficult. Mu Yu couldn't enter, so how could he break the array? "Since Xiao Shui gave you to me, will you help me enter the island?" Mu Yu didn't care whether the Shui Ling understood or not and directly asked. The Shui Ling didn't respond. Since it had followed Mu Yu, it was no different from an ordinary ribbon, drooping down. "Little Shuai, do you have a way to make this guy obedient?" Mu Yu remembered that when Mu Ling had tried to snatch the aura from Little Shuai had angrily tried to deal with Mu Ling. The Shui Ling and Mu Ling were both treasures, so Little Shuai should know something about it. However, Little Shuai shook his head. "I don't know. Look at this guy, he's like a broken hemp rope, he doesn't have any consciousness at all." At that time, this broken sword still had a trace of hostility, so I don't think this rope will be able to sense you. "Human, leave this place. Only people from the monster race can enter the Holy Island." At that moment, the phantom of a stooped old man suddenly appeared in front of Mu Yu. This old man was leaning on a walking stick, his white beard fluttering in the wind, no different from an ordinary old man. If it weren't for the 2 deer antlers sticking out from his white hair, Mu Yu would have thought he was some kind of respectable cultivator. "Greetings, senior from the monster race, I didn't mean to offend you. It's just that your monster race has asked me to come here and borrow your transmission array. I wonder if you can make it convenient for me. You should recognize this thing, right?" Mu Yu placed the Shui Ling in front of him. He didn't know whether this old man was a soul or an illusion created by the spirit array. Although he didn't feel any cultivation fluctuations from the other party, Mu Yu still didn't dare underestimate him. Since he had a request, it was better to be polite. The old man stared at the Shui Ling in Mu Yu's hand and said, "This thing doesn't belong to you. It didn't belong to me to begin with. A girl lent it to me, saying she could help me. I don't know what she meant by that, Muyu said honestly. Where is she? What about the other monster race members? The old man asked. Muyu said solemnly, you monster race members were ambushed by people from the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death. All of you died at the seaside. What? The old man's face changed greatly, the spirit array patterns around him flashing with his mood. Muyu hurriedly retreated a few steps to avoid being affected. You humans did it. The old man's face showed a trace of anger. Muyu took a few more steps back, a little further away from the spirit array patterns, and said, you can say that, but it has nothing to do with me. After I helped Xiao Shui and the White Ape Monster King leave the second layer heaven, Xiao Shui told me to come here and find the transmission array. I don't trust you. Old turtle. The old man shouted at the vast island behind him, and soon, another old man with a crooked body stepped through the air. This old man's body was also very blurry, but he didn't have the death chi that a soul should have. He didn't look like a monster soul. What's wrong? Boss Lu. Old Turtle spoke very slowly, and even his movements were very sluggish. There was a thick turtle shell on his back, so he should be a monster turtle without a doubt. Divine if the few juniors who came in from the third layer heaven are still alive, quick, Boss Lu urged. Old Turtle swayed his body slowly, and under Mu Yu's astonished gaze, he actually took off the turtle shell on his back. His mouth was muttering strange and unpleasant monster language, and his hand slowly slid along the spirit array patterns on the turtle shell. His sliding speed was extremely slow, and it could really be described as the speed of a turtle. Muyu felt that by the time he slid the length of a chopstick, an hour had already passed. Then, his finger finally turned and continued sliding. It seemed like another hour had passed, and Muyu began to yawn impatiently. With such a slow divination speed, it would be better to just go to the seaside and take a look at those headless monster corpses. Is the divination done? Little Shui shouted. Old Turtle ignored him and continued sliding his finger. Boss Lu had a good temper and didn't rush him. He just watched Muyu vigilantly from time to time, in case Muyu did something. The sky was gradually getting dark, and the sea breeze was getting stronger. Light stars appeared in the sky. Muyu was about to vomit blood. Was this old turtle's divination speed reliable? With such a halting speed, even if the monster clansmen being divined were not dead yet, they would soon be dead. Old Turtle finally stopped muttering the monster language. He opened his eyes and said seriously, that Junior Fengying is really in trouble. What about the others? I'll continue the divination, Old Turtle started muttering again. Chapter 256. How dare you? This is the secret skill of my ancestor, Black Tortoise. How dare you taint the sacred divination skill? Old Tortoise stopped chanting and scolded angrily. But Muyu ignored Old Tortoise and turned to Boss Lu. Since Old Tortoise called him boss, he must have the final say. Senior Boss Lu, so if you don't divine everyone's life or death, you won't let me in, right? Muyu didn't care about how powerful the Black Tortoise's so-called divine divination technique was. Even if the Black Tortoise begged to teach him such a mysterious divination technique, he still wouldn't lift his eyelids. Perhaps only a demon like the tortoise could play with a divination technique that could torture people to death. Humph! How dare you barge into the sacred place of the demon race? Yesterday, 2 arrogant human brats came and I chased them away. You'd better be smart and wait for Old Tortoise to finish his divination. I'll make a decision then, Boss Lu said firmly. 2 arrogant human brats came one after another. Needless to say, they must be Sai Wusheng and Gui Shenyu. It seemed that they couldn't barge into the demon island, so they chose to ambush the demon race at the seaside. Muyu was speechless. After all, he had a favor to ask of them. Why don't I go and get some demon race corpses for you to check? Muyu remembered that there were at least a dozen demon race corpses on the mountain where White Ape Demon King was sealed. If he waited for them to divine one by one, he didn't know how long it would take. He glanced at Boss Lu and Old Tortoise and flew back to the seaside. Although a round trip would take 14 to 16 hours, it was still faster than Old Tortoise's divination. Boss Lou and Old Tortoise didn't stop him and continued to divine the other demon race corpses. Those two old monsters really have nothing better to do. Moo Yu cursed non-stop along the way. But by the time Moo Yu arrived at the seaside, she discovered that the corpses of the demonic beasts had all disappeared. Hey, where are those poor demon race corpses? Little Marshall asked curiously. Gui Hong Yu. Moo Yu's expression turned ugly. He remembered that Gui Hong Yu had not crushed the jade pendant like the others. Instead, she had gone back to look for Gui Xuanyue's corpse. He didn't need to think to know that the woman from the Gate of Hell had casually destroyed the corpse to get rid of the evidence, because the ghostly aura in the surroundings had yet to dissipate. Helplessly, he rummaged through the area but couldn't find any corpses of the monster clan. Since when did the people of the Gate of Hell know how to clean up? Moo Yu wanted to cry but had no tears. Why did they have to destroy the corpses in the second heaven? He had no choice but to dejectedly return to the demon island. Why did you come back? Old Tortoise angrily rebuked. Senior Old Turtle, please continue. You can speed up a little. It's okay. Moo Yu sat down on the flying sword. These two old and muddle-headed monster race people didn't seem to believe him until they confirmed that the monster race people were dead. It was really bad luck for him to meet such a slow old guy. Thinking back to the time when he had to talk to the stuttering Deadwood old man, he couldn't wait to help Deadwood finish his sentence. He thought that no one in the world could speak as slowly as Deadwood old man, but he didn't expect Old Tortoise to be so much slower than Deadwood old man. The moon rose. Little Shuai was snoring on Moo Yu's legs. Every 4 hours, Moo Yu would hear Old Tortoise seriously say something like Red Tiger also had an accident or Sky Silkworm Baby also had an accident. Then, Boss Lou's face would darken a little. Moo Yu yawned in boredom. For the first time, he realized what it meant to move at the speed of a tortoise. The moon set and the sun rose. Unknowingly, a night had passed. Moo Yu had already fallen asleep sitting on the flying sword. What? Another one had an accident. Boss Lou's exasperated voice woke Moo Yu up. Moo Yu sleepily opened his eyes. He didn't know when the sun had risen, but it was warm on his body. He glanced at Old Tortoise from the corner of his eyes and found that Old Tortoise was still talking about divination. How many already? Moo Yu rolled his eyes and asked. He had unknowingly fallen asleep, but these two old guys didn't stop. They were still divining tirelessly. Damn it, 5 have already died. Boss Lou's expression was full of grief. The monster race people had died so miserably. Why did Moo Yu have the urge to laugh? It was not that he didn't respect the dead, but these two old guys were too weird. They were already dead, so why did they still need to use divination to prove it? Were they crazy? I say, you two old fogies. Why are you so stubborn? I already said that other than the White Ape Monster King and Xiao Shui who escaped, the rest of the monster race people were all killed. If possible, Moo Yu really wanted to pry open their heads to see if they were filled with mud. Why couldn't they be reasoned with? Wait, you just said that the White Ape Monster King escaped? Boss Lou suddenly asked. Moo Yu touched his nose. Didn't I say that yesterday? Boss Lou glared at Moo Yu. Don't you know that old people have bad hearing? Can't you say important things 3 times? Oh my God. Are you both suffering from Alzheimer's disease? Moo Yu felt that he must have been ked up to ask these two old monsters for help. Couldn't the monster race people send 2 more reliable guys to guard the door? Old Tortoise, don't do the divination anymore. I don't think this kid is lying. Boss Lou finally said something clear. Yes, I thought of it when I divined that the 3rd monster race person had an accident. Old Tortoise solemnly stroked his sparse beard, looking quite solemn. You thought of it when you saw the 3rd one? Then why are you still doing the divination? Moo Yu simply wanted to point at the 2 old monsters' noses and scold them. Did they already know that their own people had an accident, but they still dilly-dallied to do the divination? Did they have a headache? He held back his anger, thinking that he still had to enter the demon island, so he put on a gentle smile. 2 monster race seniors, you see that I didn't lie. Can I enter the island now? No, only the monster race people can enter the sacred island. Boss Lu's face was very ugly. The monster race people who came from the third heaven were all very talented, but they died outside for no reason. As an elder, he was very sad. Xiao Shui can enter. She grew up in the monster race, so naturally she can enter. Can't you prove that this water spirit belongs to Xiao Shui? Who knows if you took it from her? Mu Yu was speechless. After a while, he said, "You didn't want me to enter from the beginning, did you?" "Yes, didn't I say it 3 times? Boss Lu said. "You only said it twice." Mu Yu was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Only the monster race people can enter the sacred island. "Okay, 3 times, Boss Lu added. Mu Yu was speechless again. He found that old tortoise was talking nonsense again, as if he was trying to divine something. Mu Yu was too lazy to care about him. Thinking that he had waited here for almost a day, he was really patient. How can there be someone more shameless than me? Mu Yu, it seems that we have to close the door and release the sword. Xiao Shui whispered in Mu Yu's ear. Mu Yu had been suppressing his anger for a long time. Without saying anything, he threw Mu Ling to Boss Lu. Boss Lu and Old Tortoise didn't look like real monster race people. Their bodies were illusory, so there was no doubt that they were monster souls. If they were monster souls, he would let Mu Ling scare them and make them obediently let them go. "How dare you?" Boss Lu frowned. The runes around them moved again, and a vast spiritual power came from the island, pushing Mu Ling away. "We've been guarding the sacred island for so long. Do you really think we're vegetarians?" Old Tortoise slowly put his shell on his back, and his small eyes were shining. "You're a deer and a tortoise, aren't you vegetarians?" Mu Yu caught the wood spirit. An endless stream of vitality gushed towards Qin Wentian like a torrential river. The formation runes fluctuated once more, blocking Mu Yu's attack. Boss Lu's walking stick grew bigger in the wind, and in an instant, it became so huge that it seemed to be squeezed out of shape. Spiritual qi surged violently, and the runes from the runes gathered on the walking stick, and it smashed towards Mu Yu. With one swing of the walking stick, the void was torn apart, and the seawater roared violently. However, the walking stick's power still swept through the area, and in an instant, the seawater in the area evaporated, revealing the silt at the bottom of the sea. "Oh my god, they're really not vegetarians." Mu Yu screamed and merged into Mu Ling. Mu Ling's sword was swept hundreds of miles away, and the evaporated seawater was quickly filled up by other seawater. Boss Lu's attack was even stronger than the power of an out-of-body stage cultivator. Where did he come from? Why would the demon race send such a terrifying member to guard the sacred island? "You're fast. When I was fighting against the human race, many people died at my hands." Boss Lu's voice came from the sacred island in the distance. This old guy hid his strength well. Mu Yu crawled out of Mu Ling. The broken sword was still intact, and its skin was very thick. Thinking of how it fell asleep in front of them last night, it was lucky that nothing happened to it. Xiao Shui patted his chest with lingering fear. That was so scary. This guy is only a remnant soul, and is already so powerful. If he had a body, he would be even more terrifying. He should be a demon race member who died a long time ago, but his demon soul was integrated into the array to maintain his life. Mu Yu guessed. If his guess was correct, then the only way to defeat these two fellows was to destroy the array formation. There was no chance at all in a one-on-one fight. However, it was impossible for Mu Yu to destroy the array formation outside the array formation. "I just felt the aura of another demon soul. There are more powerful ones on the island than just the 2 of them." Xiao Shui pondered. The second heavenly layer demon clansman had already disappeared, but there were still so many powerful demon souls sealed on this demon island. Why was this? Could it be that the second heaven demon race members relied on the island to survive? The third heaven demon race members relied on teleportation jade pendants to travel to and from the second heaven because the corresponding teleportation array left by the human race in the second heaven had long been destroyed. But looking at the way Xiao Shui and the others came and went, it meant that the teleportation array used by the demon race to and from the second heaven and the third heaven was intact. As for whether the teleportation array of the demon race or the human race was more effective, in fact, it was hard to say. The human race had improved the teleportation array and invented the teleportation jade pendant, which allowed people to leave at any time and anywhere, but the teleportation location was random, so it was difficult to gather people together. The entrance location of the demon race members was fixed, so it was convenient for them to move together, but they couldn't leave at any time. Mu Yu didn't know much about the demon race, so he couldn't figure out what was hidden on the island. The second heaven demon race members had disappeared long ago, but there were still demon souls left in this place. Thinking of the demon race's underground palace, he always felt that the demon race had many unknown secrets. Unfortunately, Mu Yu had no way to uncover the big secret. The cultivation of Old Master Lu on the island was too high, and there was also the protection of the array. It was not something that Mu Yu could break through. The worst thing was that he had listened to Xiao Shuai's words and angered the two. Mu Yu, what are you going to do? Xiao Shuai asked. What can I do? I'm also desperate. Chapter 257. Mu Yu was trapped in the second layer of heaven, but an earth-shattering event happened in the third layer of heaven, causing a sensation in the entire cultivation world. One of the 10 demon kings of the demon clan, the White Ape Demon King, broke free from the seal in the second layer of heaven and escaped to the third layer of heaven through the teleportation array of the human clan. The teleportation array was located in the Danding sect. When the White Ape Demon King entered the Danding sect, everyone was furious. All the experts were ready to capture the White Ape Demon King. However, the White Ape Demon King merged with his Niden under everyone's watchful eyes. His turbulent and overbearing aura suppressed everyone like an unparalleled demon king. When he made his move, the sky darkened and everyone was caught off guard. Even the Danding sect, which had a rich foundation and endless defensive array, could not stop the demon king. The demon king destroyed countless defensive measures of the Danding sect and disturbed the senior experts of the Danding sect who had been in seclusion for many years. Unfortunately, the demon king's cultivation was too terrifying. He seriously injured many seniors of the Danding sect and even killed several juniors of the younger generation. In the end, he left with a little girl and disappeared without a trace. The birth of the demon king was like a volcanic eruption, bringing an unprecedented threat to the cultivation world. In recent years, human had attacked the cities of the human clan from time to time, causing great panic. The birth of the demon king meant one disaster after another. The demon clan, which had not appeared for thousands of years, was likely to make a comeback and compete with the human clan for the third layer of heaven. At that time, the flames of war would be raging and the people would be plunged into misery and suffering. The peace of the human clan on the third layer of heaven was broken. The human clan had to deal with the invasion of human and the rise of the demon clan. If this matter was not handled well, once the flames of war were ignited in the future, the human clan would be attacked from both sides and would be doomed eternally. All the major sects began to investigate the cause of the demon king's return. Under the confirmation of some disciples who had entered the second layer of heaven, they finally pointed the finger at one person. No one would have thought that the person who caused the birth of the demon king would be the genius disciple of the Danding sect, who had been the talk of the town for the past few months. He had once wreaked havoc on Fujian Island and killed nascent soul disciples during the Jindan period. After that, he was brought back to the Danding sect by Ku Mu and fused with an incomplete pill, shocking the entire Danding sect. Mu Yu's name once again shook the entire cultivation world. There was even news that Mu Yu had repeatedly killed his fellow disciples. This time, he even killed one of the 5 branch masters of the Danding school, Shi Dongqian's grandson. The entire cultivation world began to denounce Mu Yu, demanding that the Danding school hand him over and execute him. However, the Pill Cauldron school sent word that Mu Yu could no longer leave the second layer of heaven because he had given his teleportation jade pendant to the White Ape Demon King. At this moment, he was trapped in the second layer of heaven. The next time he could come out would be 10 years later. It was worth mentioning that although the White Ape Demon King had injured and killed many people, those who had been killed were from the Gate of Life and Death and the Gate of Hell. There were rumors that the Gate of Life and Death and the Gate of Hell had once attacked the White Ape Demon King in the second layer of heaven and had almost killed him. Later, Because Mu Yu had interfered and killed Gui Shenyu, the White Ape Demon King had escaped. Therefore, the first thing the White Ape Demon King had done after recovering his cultivation was to kill the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death. The Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death had always had a bad reputation in the 3 layers of heaven and earth. However, at this moment, they had become the object of everyone's praise. Everyone observed a moment of silence for the dead disciples of the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death. They all expressed that their deaths were worthy and honorable. The flame of their heroic souls would never be extinguished and that the human race would never forget them. However, Mu Yu had become a street rat that everyone wanted to beat up. The development of the matter was too strange. The humans who didn't know what was going on began to distort the truth. They scolded Mu Yu as a traitor to the human race and praised the people of the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death for their heroic deaths. They even set up tombstones for them. They didn't know that the people of the Gate of Hell had secretly killed countless humans in order to lay down the 9 arrays of possession and seize the White Ape Demon King's demon soul. Such inhumane people of the Gate of Hell had been forcibly twisted into heroes of the cultivation world by some people. It was really unreasonable. Stupid people spread false rumors and went with the flow. They didn't even use their own brains to look at things. It was really terrible. Senior brother Lian Tianyu, is this true? Tian Ran anxiously looked for Lian Tianyu of the Pill Cauldron sect. As one of the witnesses of the incident, Lian Tianyu knew a little more than the others. Lian Tianyu silently nodded. After a long while, he said, I really didn't expect that junior brother Shi Minghui would also lose his life in Mu Yu's hands. Impossible. I know Mu Yu's character very well. There must be something hidden in this. He is the cultivator who hates killing the most. He wouldn't do anything to Shi Minghui. Tian Ran anxiously refuted. I don't know whether Mu Yu really killed junior brother Shi Minghui or not, but Tianyun, the disciple of the Stargate, was with Shi Minghui at the time. He was also seriously injured. He insisted that it was Mu Yu who did it. He is the young master of the Stargate. You know how much weight his words carry. If Tianyun hadn't acted faster, I'm afraid he would have ended up like Shi Minghui. Lian Tianyu was the eldest senior brother of the younger generation of the Pill Cauldron sect. He did things fairly and spoke appropriately. He was loved and respected by the other junior brothers and sisters. He only spoke the truth. However, Cai Lai said, it's very likely that Tianyun is slandering Mu Yu. When Tianyun was in Mist Breath City, he wanted to take liberties with Tian Ran, but Mu Yu stopped him. Later, I heard that after we left, Mu Yu beat Tianyun up. With Tianyun's vengeful character, he will definitely take this opportunity to slander Mu Yu. Lian Tianyu frowned and said, Junior brother Cai Lai, you have to remember one thing. Mu Yu is now the target of public criticism. You have to draw a clear line between you and him. You can defend Mu Yu in front of me, but you are forbidden to say anything in front of others. Gossip is a fearful thing. They will treat you as Mu Yu's accomplice. Cai Lai snorted and said, before the truth is out, we can't directly say that Mu Yu is an unpardonably evil person. Maybe the White Ape Demon King used some kind of demonic art to confuse Mu Yu. The killing of Shi Minghui is even more untrue. Lian Tianyu angrily rebuked, don't tell me you think senior brother made a mistake? Even if senior brother made a mistake, there are still people from the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death who can testify. There are also a few fellow cultivators who saw it with their own eyes. I don't have any evidence to prove that junior brother Shi Minghui's death is really related to Mu Yu. However, whether it's slander or slander, it's a fact that Mu Yu let the Demon King go. In this kind of situation, any bad rumors about Mu Yu are credible in front of the cultivators. Cai Lai couldn't refute Tianyu's words. Lian Tianyu was right. When the cultivators believed that the White Ape Demon King was released by Mu Yu had already become the target of the cultivators' condemnation. It didn't matter whether he killed Shi Minghui or not. If he didn't kill Shi Minghui, it wouldn't reduce the cultivators' fury towards him. If he killed Shi Minghui, it would only give people another reason to curse him. I don't believe it. Big brother Mu Yu must come back. I will definitely ask him clearly. Tien Rant's tears suddenly fell. When she was in the second layer of heaven, she also heard the sound of the Demon King being born. However, she was a step too late. By the time she arrived, the Demon King had already disappeared. She hated herself. If she had arrived a step earlier, she might have been able to see Mu Yu and follow Mu Yu to clarify everything. However, she didn't make it in time. Now, Mu Yu was trapped in the second layer of heaven. His chances of survival were slim. He also suffered an unjust injustice. However, she couldn't exonerate Mu Yu. Cai Lai sighed. Yesterday, he went to find his brother Xing Jiao and asked about the general situation. Xing Jiao said that at that time, Mu Yu admitted to killing a disciple of the Gate of Hell. However, he didn't know whether it was true or not. Senior Marshal Brother, what about Elder Kumu? How is he? Cai Lai asked. Lian Tianyu pursed his lips. Marshal Uncle Kumu taught Mu Yu, this kind of rebellious disciple, which has already aroused public anger. Everyone knows that Mu Yu died in the second layer of heaven. Therefore, they want to find a target to vent their anger on. Marshal Uncle Kumu bears the brunt. The sect master has already protected him for safety reasons. What protection? The sect master is putting him under house arrest. Cai Lai was dissatisfied with Lian Tianyu's explanation. How dare you? Cai Lai, I'm warning you. You are a member of the Pill Cauldron sect. Any decision made by the sect master is not something you can question. If I hear you speak disrespectfully of the sect master again, I will not forgive you. Lian Tianyu waved his hand and left angrily. Cai Lai clenched his fists. Ever since Mu Yu's accident, Kumu had disappeared. It was said that he was being protected by the sect master. However, before Mu Yu's accident, Kumu had always been guarded by the ice-cold elder and the old man guarding the pavilion. What would threaten him? Why would he need the sect master's personal protection? Senior Marshal Brother Cai Lai, what should we do now? Tien Rant's eyes were red. When everyone was denouncing Mu Yu, only she and Cai Lai believed in Mu Yu. Cai Lai shook his head. He was powerless in this matter. Mu Yu had already paid the price for his actions. Even if he could come out, it would be 10 years later. The conditions of the second layer of heaven were extremely harsh. They had all experienced it. Who knew that Mu Yu could last for 10 years? Besides, even if Mu Yu could live until the next transmission array opened, his cultivation would definitely exceed the nascent soul stage. The transmission array could not transmit people above the nascent soul stage. Mu Yu's situation is not optimistic. Even if he can return to the third layer of heaven, the cultivation world will not tolerate him. Cai Lai believed that Mu Yu was wronged. However, he was only a small alchemist. After everyone believed in those ridiculous rumors, no one could change Mu Yu's situation. All the storms in the outside world had nothing to do with Mu Yu. No matter how much the outside world cursed him, Mu Yu knew nothing about it. At the moment, he was having a headache about how to enter the Demon Island. Without the help of the demon race's transmission array, he could not think of any other way to leave the second layer of heaven. Boss Lu, if you have something to say, I won't do it this time. With a hit of the crutch, a large area of seawater evaporated and filled again. Senior Turtle, I know I was wrong the day before yesterday. Can you make an exception for me? With a hit of the turtle shell, a large area of seawater evaporated and filled again. You always treat me as an outsider. You see, the sea level will be lowered. I just want to say a few words. With a hit of the crutch and the turtle shell at the same time, a large area of seawater evaporated and filled again. Time flew, and half a year had passed. In the past 6 months, Mu Yu, in addition to cultivating every day, went to visit the 2 guardians of the Demon Island. Unfortunately, they did not like him. As soon as he came, they served him with crutches and turtle shells. Mu Yu did not know how many attacks he had escaped with Mu Ling. In the past 6 months, Mu Yu's cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds, and he had reached the 9th layer of Yuanying. It had to be said that the spiritual qi in the second layer of heaven was very helpful for cultivation. However, he could only stop cultivating, because if he broke through to the out-of-body stage, the transmission array could not take him out. The two old guys obviously felt that it was a strenuous task to chase Mu Yu away. He was like a piece of sticky candy that they could not kick away. Mu Yu's cockroach-like spirit finally moved the two old monsters who were gnashing their teeth in anger. "What the hell do you want?" Boss Lu said impatiently. "I just want to go back to the third layer of heaven," Mu Yu said innocently. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Boss Lu said bitterly. Mu Yu touched his nose. "I said it from the beginning. You don't know how bad my memory is. Very bad, I know. Important things need to be said 3 times. I want to go back to the third layer of heaven. I want to go back to the third layer of heaven. I want to go back to the third layer of heaven. I want to go back to the third layer of heaven. I want to go back to the third layer of heaven, okay?" Mu Yu shook his head. "It's not impossible for you to borrow our transmission array, but you have to wait for another 10 years. I think I turned off the transmission array of the monster clan the day before yesterday. I thought it would be useless since they were all in trouble," Old Tortoise said slowly. "What? You turned it off the day before yesterday? F***ck you old hen balls." Mu Yu opened his eyes wide and finally began to swear. He had never seen such an unreliable person. He always thought that Xiao Shuai was the representative of muddle-headedness. He did not expect these two old monsters to be comparable to Xiao Shuai. "So you are not after the treasure on our holy island? If you had told me earlier, I would not have been so lazy to drive you away every day." Boss Lu sat on the reef and scratched the antler on his head. Mu Yu wanted to cry but had no tears. He did not know whether these two old monsters were playing tricks on him. Chapter 258. The demonic aura around the island soared into the sky, and the stormy waves wreaked havoc on the black reefs. The demonic beasts at the bottom of the sea didn't dare to come close. However, at this moment, on the reefs of the island, 3 figures were sitting there and chatting very harmoniously. Just a quarter of an hour ago, 2 of the old monsters made a move and evaporated a small part of the seawater. "Really? There's another way to go out?" Mu Yu suddenly became excited. If he could really find an opportunity to go out, then dealing with these 2 old monsters for the past 6 months wouldn't be a waste of time. The old tortoise nodded and said, "Aren't you curious why the second heaven and the third heaven are 2 different worlds, but they can communicate with each other?" Mu Yu shook his head. Why would he think about this for no reason? He had no clue about this kind of brain-teasing thing, and he couldn't figure it out without any hint. "Have you heard of a spiritual eye?" the old tortoise asked again. Mu Yu nodded. A spiritual eye was the source of spiritual energy in the cultivation world. Not to mention anything else, there was a spiritual eye in Luochen Mountain, and it was always occupied by Xiao Shuai. The old tortoise twirled its 2 whiskers and said, "A spiritual eye is a passage that connects the 2 worlds." What? Mu Yu was surprised. He had seen a spiritual eye before. It only emitted spiritual energy as if it appeared out of thin air. One could only see one side and not the other. He always thought that the spiritual energy in the cultivation world came from spiritual eyes hidden all over the world, but he didn't expect that a spiritual eye was a passage that connected the 2 worlds. The teleportation array of your human race is the same as the teleportation array of our demon race. Set up a formation to change the spiritual eye into a passage that can be entered and exited. However, the formation of the spiritual eye has been lost for a long time. Now, we can't study it even if we want to, the old tortoise continued. So we go in and out of the second heaven and the third heaven through the spiritual eye? Mu Yu still felt that it was inconceivable. He couldn't even get close to the spiritual eye when he wanted to. At that time, Xiao Shuai was still in his eggshell. He wanted to use his round buttocks or head to block the spiritual eye, but he couldn't block it. How could it let people go in and out? You have to know that there is an unimaginably thick barrier between 2 different worlds. Under normal circumstances, it is very difficult to break through this barrier. However, because the concentration of spirit chi in the 2 worlds was different, the world with a higher concentration of spirit chi would squeeze the barrier and open a channel, pouring spirit chi into the world with a lower concentration. The spirit chi in the second heavenly layer is very rich, while the spirit chi in the third heavenly layer is very low. Therefore, there are many spirit chi eyes in the places where you can't see them. The second heaven was like an unexplored world. After the extinction of the demon race and the human race who knew how to use spiritual chi to cultivate, the spiritual chi in the second heaven was much richer than in the third heaven. Therefore, the spiritual chi in many places in the third heaven came from the second heaven. The spiritual chi eye was more like a bridge that connected the second and third heavens. The old tortoise paused for a moment before continuing. The third layer spirit chi eye emits spirit chi outwards while the second layer spirit chi eye continuously absorbs spirit chi. If we want to travel between the two worlds, we can use this spirit chi eye to do so. However, when passing through the barrier between heaven and earth, we have to endure the pressure from the two worlds. That kind of pressure can instantly destroy people into nothingness. The purpose of the teleportation formation is to ensure that we won't be crushed by the pressure of heaven and earth. The more Muyu listened, the more puzzled he felt. After carefully pondering for a while, he gradually understood. At the same time, he couldn't help but sigh at how thorough the ancient people's research on teleportation formations was. To be able to find a way to use the spirit chi to travel between two different worlds was really an eye-opener. So, the other way you mentioned is... Muyu immediately thought of something. That is to find another spirit chi and think of a way to pass through it. I think that the blue ribbon in your hand can do it. It is the source of water between heaven and earth, so it won't be destroyed by the pressure of heaven and earth. Back then, the teleportation formation of the Yarrow clan only considered the physique of the Yarrow clan and wasn't suitable for teleporting humans. That's why Xiao Shui relied on it to come here, the old tortoise said. Muyu finally understood why Xiao Shui gave him the water spirit. She knew that the teleportation formation of the Yarrow clan was different from that of the human clan. If a human wanted to pass through the teleportation formation of the Yarrow clan, they had to rely on the protection of certain treasures. The water spirit had helped Xiao Shui before, so she thought that the water spirit would also help Muyu. Unfortunately, the water spirit really turned into a hemp rope in Muyu's hands. It had no vitality at all and could only be controlled by Xiao Shui. How could Muyu control it? Fortunately, Muyu had a broken sword. This thing was indestructible. Even after being bombarded by Boss Lu and the old tortoise, it could still protect Muyu. This was enough to show how special it was. The water spirit was Shui Yu Meng's sacred item. If it could protect Xiao Shui when she passed through the barrier of heaven and earth, then Muyu's Mu Ling would definitely be able to do the same. Muyu recalled the time when he and Tian Ran discovered Yu Meng's teleportation formation in the Moyun mountain range. Tian Ran couldn't withstand the tearing force of Yu Meng's teleportation formation, and it was Mu Ling who helped her in time. Mu Ling was the same as the water spirit. They were both rare treasures in the world. At that time, he didn't want it, but now that he thought about it, he felt that he was being too pretentious. Mu Ling had saved him countless times. "Can you lend me your spirit chi?" Muyu asked. "No, the spirit chi is protected by a formation." "Then tell me where there are other spirit chi-eyes." "I'll go look for them," Muyu said helplessly. The old tortoise lazily glanced at Muyu. "Do I know you that well? If you don't, then what are we doing here?" Muyu asked curiously. "Then tell me, what's my name?" "Old Tortoise, Tortoise. Tortoise Prime Minister. Tortoise. Sea Tortoise. Silly 8 Tortoise." Muyu guessed casually, using all the terms he could think of. After pestering these two old monsters for half a year, he actually didn't think of asking for their names. He even felt a little embarrassed. Scram! Another tortoise shell smashed down, evaporating a large area of seawater and filling it up again. Muyu cursed in a low voice, then flew in the direction that the old tortoise pointed to. The old tortoise didn't want to be pestered by Muyu anymore, so it didn't want to tell him. It didn't know about other places, but there was definitely a spirit chi where the Demon King was sealed. When sealing the Demon King, the spirit chi around him had to be isolated, allowing time to slowly deplete the Demon King's immortal body. The seal was built on a spirit chi, then let the spirit chi drain all the spirit chi in the formation, not giving the white ape Demon King any chance to breathe. As long as there was no spirit chi, even the white ape demon king's immortal body would be obliterated. However, the formation also needed the support of spirit chi, so when the spirit chi maintaining the formation was exhausted by the spirit chi, the formation would be removed. The formation that sealed the demon king had trapped him for thousands of years before it was exhausted, showing how strong the spirit chi maintaining the formation was. He didn't know how the human senior who sealed the white ape demon king did it, but to be able to think of using the spirit chi as a seal to trap the white ape demon king, it was really amazing. Mu Yu flew for another day and night before he found the mountain where the demon king had escaped. He remembered that half a year ago, he had fought with a group of demon clansmen here, and even killed the ghost blade of the Gate of Hell. He had also witnessed the white ape demon king's power when he escaped. Unfortunately, in order to protect Xiao Shui's safety, he had to help the white ape demon king. He didn't know whether the white ape demon king had taken Xiao Shui and escaped from the Danding sect. All of this seemed to have happened yesterday, and it was still vivid in his mind. Mu Yu estimated that his reputation in the cultivation world had already been ruined, but he didn't care. His master had said that he had to ask his own heart before doing anything. As long as he had a clear conscience, then what he did was right. Xiao Shui had the same ability to control the 5 elements as him, so he had the obligation to help her. The mountain peak was already deformed, as the white ape demon king's punch had smashed it into a crooked cliff. Many huge stones had fallen into the lake, leaving only a small section above the lake's surface. Mu Yu remembered that when he was looking for the 9 Qi soul cleansing flower, he had wondered what kind of power could destroy a mountain peak. Now that he thought about it, even the white ape demon king, who had no cultivation, had smashed a mountain peak, then smashing a 6 raising mountain wouldn't be a big deal. However, the 6 raising mountain was hundreds of times higher than this mountain peak. That phantom Qing Yu must have been much more powerful than the white ape demon king. Did I tell you? Since I came to this mountain, I have smelled a familiar smell. Xiao Shui sniffed again. I know, you are talking about the smell of roasted soybeans. Mu Yu was too lazy to pay attention to it and directly flew up the mountain. The demon king had been sealed at the top of the mountain, so the spirit chi must be near the top of the mountain. When he arrived at the top of the mountain, the complicated carvings on the ground were already deformed. The top of the mountain was broken, and many of the carved stones had fallen into the bottomless crevices. Mu Yu walked to the place where the demon king used to be and carefully sensed it, but he still couldn't find where the spirit chi was. I smell roasted soybeans. It should be here. Xiao Shui sniffed and suddenly drilled into a crevice. Xiao Shui was an expert in matters of spirit chi, so Mu Yu quickly followed. The crevice became smaller and smaller, and Mu Yu's body couldn't pass through it. He drilled into Mu Ling and followed closely behind Xiao Shui. In the end, Mu Ling's sword seemed unable to pass through. He thought that it would be great if Mu Ling's sword could turn into a root grass. He didn't expect that just as this thought formed in his mind, Mu Ling had already turned into a root grass and continued to go underground. Oh my God! Why didn't you say that you could transform? Mu Yu cursed, but when he thought about how he could transform Mu Ling into any plant in the future, it was still a very happy thing. It's here. The front became open. Xiao Shui wagged its tail and pointed at a pitch-black place in front of them. There was no light at all in the place that Xiao Shui pointed at. It was pure darkness, and there was a turbulent suction force jumping about. Mu Yu had seen this suction force before. When the teleportation jade pendant was crushed and the teleportation formation pulled them back to the spirit chi, it was the same suction force. The surrounding spirit chi was continuously sucked into the void. According to Old Tortoise, the spirit chi in the spirit chi should be flowing towards the 3rd heaven, but he didn't know where it was flowing towards. Chapter 259. Where does it lead to? Mu Yu asked, puzzled. Luochen Mountain. This spirit chi leads to Luochen Mountain. Little Shui's words shocked Mu Yu. He hurriedly asked, are you sure? Little Shui nodded. When I first came here, I felt that the spirit chi here was very familiar, but I didn't connect it to the spirit chi. Now that I think about it, I've been absorbing spirit chi for so long in the spirit chi eye under Luochen Cliff. I'm very familiar with the smell of spirit chi. How could it be so coincidental? He knew that Luochen Mountain had a spirit chi eye, but the other end of the spirit chi eye was actually the Demon King's sealed place. This was something he never expected. There were many spirit chi eyes in the third heaven, but the one that was connected to the spirit chi eye of the Demon King's sealed place was Luochen Mountain. This was really inconceivable. He frowned and fell into deep thought. His master's identity was extraordinary. As a true god of the third heaven, he definitely knew the situation of the third heaven like the back of his hand. He couldn't have asked little Shuai to block the spirit chi eye for no reason. Could it be that he knew that the spirit chi eye of Luochen Mountain corresponded to the Demon King's sealed place? But the Demon King's sealed place couldn't be found even after a lifetime of searching. How could his master know? Many questions flooded his mind. Mu Yu was becoming more and more unable to see through his master. Little Shuai knocked on Mu Yu's head and said, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go home. Go home." Right. Mu Yu's heart leaped with joy. After passing through this spirit chi eye, he would arrive at Luochen Mountain that he had left for many years. That was his home. He had his closest martial brothers and an amiable master. After not seeing him for 3 years, he didn't know how his master had become. Mu Yu threw away those questions. No problem was more important than going home. Luochen Mountain was his root, the place where his immortal cultivation began. He had drifted aimlessly outside for so long, experienced so many dangers, and was still trapped in the second heaven. To him, the most wonderful thing was to go home. "Little Marshal, let's go home." Mu Yu controlled Mu Ling excitedly and led Little Marshal into the darkness of nothingness. He didn't need to look for the entrance at all. There was a strong tearing force here, and the spiritual chi eye would naturally suck him in. The familiar feeling of passing through the teleportation formation once again returned to Mu Yu. This time, the pressure he felt was even more majestic and almost destructive. He was really afraid that Mu Ling's sword, which was riddled with holes, would break with a creak. However, Mu Ling's sword still stood firm, bringing him into the endless darkness. To the west of the 3 continents was a vast mountain range. There were very few signs of human habitation, and the land was very barren. One of them was a paradise, a place where the demons gathered all year round. The demon clan, who had disappeared for thousands of years, had been cultivating here, turning the barren land into a unique small town. It was extremely difficult for demonic beasts to gain intelligence and become demonic beasts. Therefore, after so many years, the demonic beasts still did not have enough strength to fight against the human race. They had always been waiting for their strength to grow, waiting for the 10 demon kings to gradually return. They knew that when the 10 demon kings reunited, it would be the time for the demonic beasts to wage war against the human race. After so many years, there was only one human living among the demons in the demonic beasts' territory, and that was Xiao Shui. In a stream at the foot of the mountain, there was a pond. The pond water was so clear that one could see the bottom, and there were many blooming black lotus flowers in the pond. Xiao Shui was sitting on a smooth stone in the center of the pond. She wore a light blue dress, and her dress was slightly raised. She was barefoot, and she was gently stirring the pond water, creating faint ripples. In the water, there were 2 beautiful fish playing with each other. Their fins were like pure wings, gently flapping. One of the flying fish spat out a string of water into the air, which flew high into the air before exploding into mist. The 2 flying fish directly jumped out of the water and flew freely in the mist. Xiao Shui looked at the flying fish with a heavy heart. She didn't know why, but after returning from the second layer of heaven, that young man's figure had been lingering in her mind. "Do you want to know why I helped you? Because in the dream, you said that you liked me. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance." Mu Yu's words kept reverberating in Xiao Shui's mind. In the past half a year, she had been thinking about what Mu Yu had said to her, and these words always made her feel flustered. Although she was a human, she didn't like humans. Because of certain things, she had a deep sense of rejection towards humans. Just like how the demonic beasts had a prejudice against humans, She also had a great prejudice against humans. I won't like you. Xiao Shui planned to wait until Mu Yu came out of the second layer of heaven before explaining everything to him. This was the first thing she was prepared to say to Mu Yu when she saw him again. But she rejected it. Why would I say this to him? It's like I'm acting spoiled. I don't like him, and I only think of him because he helped me. Xiao Shui tried to convince herself. She gently waved her hand, and the water in the pond began to revolve around her, turning into water butterflies that danced in the air. She tilted her head and looked at the dancing butterflies. After thinking for a while, she said, "When he comes out, I'll ask him where the hell did you go? You made me worry for so long." But she rejected it again. It's like how Big Sister Iron Fan scolded Big Brother Bull. The two of them scolded each other every day, but the two of them were very loving. What if he misunderstood that I liked him? Xiao Shui shook her head. Then, she thought that Mu Yu was actually a pretty good person. Although he looked frivolous, he always wanted to protect her. He was a man that gave her a sense of security. In the past, Xiao Shui had always heard from Big Sister Iron Fan that human men were unreliable. Not only did they abandon their women, but they also had a deep hatred for the demonic beasts. But Mu Yu was different from the human men that Big Sister Iron Fan described. He risked his life to protect her, a demonic beast, in front of a group of cultivators. Why would he do that? Could it be that he really likes me? Xiao Shui blushed again. She was at the age where love was first blossoming. This thought made her heart beat faster. If he likes me, so be it. It's fine as long as I don't like him. Xiao Shui looked at her reflection in the water. Back then, in order to protect Mu Yu from the teleportation array, she gave the water spirit to Mu Yu. But Mu Yu said something strange to her. Is this a token of love? Xiao Shui recalled Mu Yu's frivolous smile when they parted. At that time, she gave the water spirit to Mu Yu. His words made her feel a little helpless. That's not a token of love. Xiao Shui's mind went blank. When she reacted and wanted to say this, she was already taken away from the second layer of heaven by the teleportation jade pendant. Xiao Shui's lips unknowingly curled up. She felt that if Mu Yu liked her, she could also try to like him. But what if he didn't like her? Xiao Shui was vexed again. Her mind was filled with a mess of feelings. Her eyes were filled with Mu Yu's figure, and she couldn't get rid of it. Xiao Shui's feet slid in the pond. Water droplets rose from the pond, allowing the flying fishes to continue flying in the air. Do you guys think that he'll definitely be able to walk out of the second layer of heaven? Xiao Shui asked the two beautiful creatures. The flying fishes cried out happily. Their voices were very pleasant to the ears. Ever since they met Xiao Shui in the territory of the demon race, Xiao Shui used her ability to subdue them. They followed Xiao Shui wholeheartedly. But our demon race's teleportation array has been closed. Why hasn't he come out yet? Xiao Shui revealed a worried expression. The teleportation array had been closed. It would take 10 years before it could be opened again. This was what she was truly worried about. If Mu Yu was trapped in the second layer of heaven for 10 years, what would happen? A white figure flew through the mountain stream, leaving behind an afterimage in the air before landing lightly behind Xiao Shui. What's wrong? Are you still thinking about that brat? The white ape demon king put on his clothes to cover his wild muscles. He looked less unruly and more mature. He looked dignified and divine. Xiao Shui blushed and rebuked, "Uncle Ape, I'm not thinking about him." After a while, Xiao Shui asked again, "Is there any news about him? If you don't miss him, then why are you so concerned about him?" White Ape Demon King deliberately said. That's because he helped us." Xiao Shui avoided White Ape Demon King's gaze. White Ape Demon King shook his head. According to the reports from outside, his reputation in the human race has been completely ruined. Everyone is calling him a traitor. If the human race doesn't want him, we can take him in. Xiao Shui quickly said. "Take that brat in. Didn't you see how he treated me in the second layer of heaven? His attitude was too rude. I don't have a good impression of him. If I catch him, I'll beat him up." The White Ape Monster King waved his hand. He recalled the time when Mu Yu had carried him in her hand like a little chick. Moreover, a little mouse had wantonly ridiculed him. This made his heart burn with anger. Xiao Shui was anxious, he didn't do it on purpose. The situation was so critical at that time. Why would he care about such details? White Ape Demon King laughed. You're speaking up for your little lover so quickly. He's not my lover. Xiao Shui stomped her feet on the water and retorted impatiently. White Ape Demon King shook his head. It's not that I don't want to take him in. It's just that the other clansmen won't trust him. He's not like you. Xiao Shui fell silent. Although the devil race hated the human race, they treated Xiao Shui very well. Because Xiao Shui grew up in the devil race and had a strange ability to control water, she was accepted by the devil race. However, the devil race wouldn't trust other humans. Even if this human helped White Ape Demon King escape, it was useless. The devil race was too wary of the human race. Moreover, I don't think he'll join the devil race. He didn't let me kill people casually, which means he's leaning towards the human race. If not, the people who died in the Pill Cauldron sect wouldn't be the ones from the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death. White Ape Demon King had restrained himself that day. Many people from the Pill Cauldron sect were only injured and didn't lose their lives. I hope he's safe. Xiao Shui sighed. The situation in the second layer of heaven was quite bad. There were all kinds of powerful demon beasts everywhere. She didn't know if Mu Yu could survive. Chapter 260. After passing through the spirit Chi, it felt like 10,000 years had passed, but it also felt like an instant. There was a void in the heaven and earth barrier, and it was impossible to see the situation around them. They could only feel that the devouring force was going to destroy Mu Ling. Mu Ling was like a small boat in a storm, drifting with the waves. It could capsize at any time. Mu Yu had never felt this when he passed through the Pill Cauldron sect's teleportation formation. It had only been an instant, and there had been no discomfort because the teleportation formation had blocked all dangers outside. However, Mu Ling was resisting the heaven and earth barrier alone, using its broken body to resist the destructive pressure. Mu Yu and Mu Ling's hearts were connected, and they felt the same way. It was easy to imagine how worried they were. However, Mu Yu's body immediately became light, and a repulsive force threw Mu Ling out. Mu Ling quickly steadied himself and stood quietly in the air, looking at the pure white hole in front of him. It just so happened that it was the spirit Chi. We've returned to the third heaven? Mu Yu was overjoyed as he scanned his surroundings. There was a huge space surrounded by tree roots. Spirit Chi nourished these tree roots, but it couldn't get any closer. There was a solid barrier blocking it. This was where Xiao Shui had once stayed. We've really returned to the falling dust mountain? Mu Yu's heart jumped with joy. He had once chosen to leave this place to save his master. He had drifted through the third heaven and experienced countless hardships. Now, he had finally returned to the falling dust sect with the 9 Chi soul cleansing flower and netherworld grass. He didn't have to search for the elusive third heaven anymore. With the 9 Chi soul cleansing flower and netherworld grass, his master's recovery was just around the corner. The millions of people in the Moyun mountain range wouldn't die for no reason. Everything seemed to be developing in a good direction. What are you spacing out for? Go up. Drumsticks. Drumsticks. My teeth are already thirsty. Xiao Shui bared his teeth and said. It also didn't like the second layer of heaven because there weren't any delicious drumsticks in the second layer of heaven. The food that Mu Yu brought into the second layer of heaven had long been squandered by it. Usually, when it roasted demon beasts, it didn't have enough seasoning, so it wasn't tasty enough. What? Are you in such a hurry to eat Nshu's drumstick? I think you should really try Nshu's cooking. I guarantee that you won't have any interest in food anymore. Nshu's disastrous cooking skills could make Mu Yu fast for a month. In the past, Little Shui was just a strange egg in Luochen Mountain. After passing through Yuman's teleportation array, he had accidentally broken out of his shell. From then on, his true nature as a glutton was completely revealed. Perhaps after leaving Xiao Shui with Nshu for a few days, Xiao Shuai would become a good child who ate vegetarian and recited scriptures. Mu Yu came out. At this moment, the immortal confining prison did not restrict people in the nascent soul stage. Therefore, Mu Yu did not feel threatened by the immortal confining prison. He directly blended into the roots of the old banyan tree and followed the roots back to Luochen Cliff. Luochen Cliff was deserted, there was no one there. As expected, there were only 5 people left at the Luochen mountain. Chengyang and the rest had left. Kong Kong Miao Miao should be digging for bird eggs in the forest. And Shu should be cooking. Master and old Zun should be busy in the vegetable garden. Mu Yu stood on Luochen Cliff as the mountain breeze brushed past his face. He was incomparably content. The city in the distance was still like a hibernating dragon. It had experienced the vicissitudes of life. Small villages were surrounded by scattered fields. It was fresh and elegant. What a harmonious landscape painting. Clang. The sound of something hitting the ground came from behind. Then, a surprised voice sounded. Mu Yu? Is that you? Mu Yu turned around and saw old Zun. He immediately smiled and said, Old Zun, that's right, I'm back. Old Zun didn't change at all. He still looked hale and hearty. Mu Yu threw the broom on the ground to the side. He probably wanted to come to Luochen Cliff to clean. When he saw Mu Yu, he was so excited that he even dropped the broom on the ground. Old Zun walked forward and tightly held Mu Yu's hand. He could only repeat this sentence, it's good that you're back, it's good that you're back. In the past, if it wasn't for Mu Yu, he would have lost his life long ago. It was also Mu Yu who allowed him to live the life he longed for his entire life. He became an immortal master instead of a grey disciple who was ordered around by others. He would never forget this kindness for the rest of his life. Mu Yu was also quite emotional. Back at the academy, when he was bullied by the little tiger, it was old Zun who spoke up for him and gave him warmth. He had long considered old Zun as one of his own. After a long time, Mu Yu asked, Old Zun, where is Master? And Shu and the 2 troublemakers? Old Zun's eyes dimmed after hearing this. He said, Kong Kong and Miao Miao are cultivating at the Qingsong school. As for Lord An and the sect master, they left half a year ago. Mu Yu frowned and asked in confusion, Left? Where did they go? Old Zun shook his head and said, I'm not sure. The sect master told me to take care of Kong Kong and Miao Miao, then he left with Lord An. He seemed to have mentioned that there was a change in the spiritual energy eye and that the White Ape Demon King had come out. He had to go and resolve the chaos of the demon race. The spiritual energy eye had a change, the White Ape Demon King had come out, and the demon race was in chaos. Mu Yu was extremely shocked in his heart. Half a year ago was the time when the White Ape Demon King broke out of the seal. At that time, he happened to be in the 2nd layer of heaven and witnessed everything. Most importantly, the White Ape Demon King's escape was caused by him. Master, who exactly are you? Mu Yu's heart could not calm down for a long time. He had always thought that the spiritual energy eye of Luochen Mountain was connected to the White Ape Demon King's seal. He had never thought that his master, Jenying Chen Feng, had known all of this for a long time. Mu Yu didn't know why her master had used a foodie like Little Shuai to block the aura eye, but one thing she was sure of was that her master knew the secret of the other side of the aura eye, and also knew what the aura eye meant. It was definitely not a coincidence that he had built the sect on Luochen Mountain. It was to protect the spiritual energy eye and monitor the White Ape Demon King's situation. When Mu Yu connected all these things together, he felt more and more incredulous. The shabbiest sect in the Moyun mountain range, the Luochen sect, seemed to be wrapped in layers of veils. When Mu Yu lifted one veil, there was always another veil covering it. His master was still as unfathomable as before. That amiable sect leader who stood aloof from worldly affairs was actually a true god who had saved the entire human race. In order to bring peace to the human race, he had chosen to sacrifice himself and become the array foundation of the immortal confining prison. At the same time, he was also the guardian of the spiritual energy eye and the monitor of the Demon King's seal. What other secrets did his master have that had not been uncovered? Mu Yu's heart was surging with emotions. Thousands of thoughts ran through his mind, and he could not calm down for a long time. From the moment he had walked out of Flowing Water Village, everything seemed to have been within his expectations. What other identities did this enigmatic old man have? Although Mu Yu had a grudge against his master for keeping secrets, he had nothing to complain about. Everyone had their own secrets, and there was no need to reveal them all. No matter what, his master had his reasons for doing what he did. He would not harm his disciple. This was something Mu Yu firmly believed. Master said he was going to resolve the demon race's unrest. How is he going to resolve it? Mu Yu asked. When the White Ape Demon King struggled free from the seal, his master had left to resolve the demon race's unrest. With his master's strength alone, could he really do it? If it was the previous true god of the three continents, Jian Ying and Chen Feng, Mu Yu would not have doubted his master's ability. He was even able to defeat human, let alone the insignificant demon race. But now, his master had become the array core of the immortal confining prison. His dantian had been ravaged by the immortal confining prison, and his cultivation had fallen to the Jindan period. How was he going to resolve the demon race's unrest? Old Zun thought for a while, then shook his head and said, I also don't know. I vaguely heard the sect leader say that he was going to look for a person called Xie Bulao. As for where exactly he was going to look for him, I don't know. Xie Bulao? Mu Yu had never heard of this person. Why was this person's name so strange? Could it be that he was someone from the demonic sect? When Mu Yu thought of the demonic sect, he thought of Shimen Wuji, that unreliable and shameless fellow. This Xie Bulao might be an expert from the demonic sect. Mu Yu didn't know much about the three continents. After he left, he spent most of his time with the dead tree. This stuttering old man was obviously not the kind of person who would tell you stories. Not to mention that he was antisocial and looked down on others. Even if he was willing to tell, Mu Yu would feel like an entire day had passed by the time he finished listening. So, other than the people from the Danding sect, Mu Yu wasn't very familiar with the others. Then Old Zun, why are you still here? Shouldn't you be at the Qingsong school? Mu Yu asked. Ever since they left, I have been coming back every 10 days to clean all the rooms. I can't let the sect leader come back with a room full of spider webs. Old Zun laughed. He knew what his status in the Falling Dust sect meant. Every disciple of the Falling Dust sect had outstanding talent, and he was only a chi refining stage cultivator. Compared to everyone in the Falling Dust sect, he seemed so insignificant. Although everyone didn't treat him as an outsider, he still felt that he had to do something within his power. Thank you for your hard work. Mu Yu was quite touched by Old Zun's thoughtfulness. Old Zun was a very good elder. In the past, he was able to manage a school where good and bad people were mixed together. This was enough to show that his ability was not ordinary. With him here, Mu Yu was very relieved. He and Old Zun left the Falling Dust Cliff and walked around their residence. Old Zun went to the medicine garden to take care of those medicinal herbs, and Mu Yu went to check out his previous room. Those familiar wooden house and furniture seemed so intimate. Although shabby, it made people feel at ease. If he could, he really wanted to stay in this place for the rest of his life, away from the deceit of the cultivation world. He would quarrel with everyone all day long and complain about Nshu's terrible food. Every night, he would sit at the Falling Dust Cliff and listen to his master explain all kinds of magical things. It would be good to be a carefree itinerant immortal. However, Mu Yu knew that the immortal confinement prison had not been lifted. His master's cultivation had not recovered, and his life was in danger. The million people in the Moyun mountain range were also in danger. He couldn't stay here forever. In particular, Yuman was watching covetously from the outside, the demon race was ready to attack, and the cultivation world was in turmoil. He had the ability of Yuman, so it was an extravagant hope for him to stay out of trouble. Looking at the 9-chi soul-cleansing flower and netherworld grass in his hand, he sighed slightly. It was not easy to get these two things, but he encountered a bigger problem. The dead tree did not tell Mu Yu how to use these two rare medicinal herbs to recover Feng Haochun's cultivation. Perhaps Feng Haochun himself knew, but Mu Yu came back one step too late and missed him. Old Zun, Let's go to the Chingsong school. I want to see how those two troublemakers are doing. After not seeing them for 3 years, Muyu also missed them very much. Although Kong Kong and Meow Meow were extremely restless, they also brought endless joy to everyone. Chapter 261. After returning to the Moyun mountain range, Muyu realized how scarce the spirit chi here was. If the spirit chi in the third layer of the continent was dozens of times richer than the Moyun mountain range, then the spirit chi in the second layer of the continent was hundreds of times richer. Because of the spirit chi in the Luochen mountain, the spirit chi here was the same as in the third layer of the continent outside the Moyun mountain range. However, in the Moyun mountain range outside the Luochen mountain range, the spirit chi was like a small spoon of sugar melting into a large water tank. Everyone was scrambling to taste the sugar water. Muyu's cultivation had reached the nascent soul stage, so his speed was extremely fast. In the past, it would take him many hours to get to the Chingsong school, but now it only took him half an hour. When they landed at the foot of the Chingsong school, Old Zun's eyes were filled with disbelief. He could only fly with the help of the magic treasure Feng Haochen gave him. Even so, it took him half a day to fly. However, Muyu had brought him there in the blink of an eye. Muyu, let me ask you. Is your cultivation all ready? Old Zun swallowed his saliva and felt that it was a little unbelievable. Yes, I've reached the nascent soul stage, Muyu said casually. His cultivation had reached the 9th layer of the nascent soul stage. His cultivation wasn't very dazzling on the 3rd layer of the continent. There were many people with high cultivation on the 3rd layer of the continent. He could only be considered average. However, among the younger generation on the 3rd layer of the continent, he was indeed one of the best. Muyu wasn't surprised that he had reached the 9th layer of the nascent soul stage. When he was in the 2nd layer of the continent, he had stayed near the Demon Island for half a year. Including the 2 months limited by the teleportation jade pendant, he had stayed for nearly 8 months. The spirit chi in the 2nd layer of the continent was very rich. With Muyu's talent, it wasn't unreasonable for him to have such a cultivation speed. He didn't think it was a big deal, but in Old Zun's eyes, it was like a fantasy story. Nascent soul stage? Oh my god. Wouldn't that be the same as the green pine daoist? Elder Zun sucked in a deep breath. Although he had already thought of this possibility, he was still shocked to hear it from Muyu's mouth. I think so. I think I'm slightly stronger than Chingsong Taoist. Muyu knew what Elder Zun was thinking. In any case, Elder Zun was one of them, so there was nothing to hide. It was too difficult for Chingsong Taoist to improve his cultivation in a place like the Moyun mountain range. Muyu estimated that Chingsong Taoist was at most in the 1st heavenly layer of the nascent soul stage. Then, you're also an ancestor-level figure? Elder Zun was so frightened that he almost fell over. What patriarch? I'm still young. Muyu stroked Little Handsome's tail. Just now, Little Handsome had insisted on going to the city to buy a few drumsticks to eat. Now, he was happily munching on them. Ancestor? Aya, then wouldn't we be able to see Ancestor everywhere outside the 3 continents? Little Handsome said incoherently. Nascent soul stage cultivators could only be called Ancestor in a barren and backward place like the Moyun mountain range. In the 3 continents, nascent soul stage cultivators were only qualified to roam the cultivation world. There were many people stronger than nascent soul stage cultivators everywhere. It took Elder Zun a long time to come back to his senses. When he remembered that Muyu could even defeat Chingsong Taoist, he immediately beamed with joy. This way, the Luo Chen sect status in the Moyun mountain range would be even higher. He then recalled how Muyu's second senior brother, Luo Shong, had managed to subdue the pine tree daoist. Now that Muyu had returned, she was even more extraordinary. There was no need to mention how proud he was. Elder Zun said, the current head of Chingsong School is Bai Liang. Chingsong Taoist has already retired to focus on cultivation. Now, all the sects in the Moyun mountain range listen to Chingsong School's orders. No one dares to disobey. Muyu didn't know this. Muyu had left the Moyun mountain range for 3 years, But Qingsong School had also unified the cultivation world for 4 years. He didn't know how the Moyun mountain range had changed over the years. However, it didn't matter much to him who became the head of Qingsong School. Qingsong Taoist had to bow and scrape in front of him. Bai Liang was nothing. The two of them quickly arrived at Qingsong School. When Mu Yu saw the Qingsong School again, he was no longer as amazed as before. He admitted that the overall architectural style of Qingsong School was very extravagant, but it was still far from being comparable to the rich and powerful sects like Danding School. Danding School was a super large sect with a rich heritage. No matter how powerful Qingsong School was, it could only abuse its power in the Moyun mountain range. It was nothing in the Third Mainland. However, even if the Pine Tree sect couldn't compare to the great sects of the 3 continents, it was still much stronger than Mu Yu's Falling Dust sect. Mu Yu looked at the magnificent gate of Qingsong School. He thought that Qingsong School was indeed rich. It was a pity that his master kept a low profile. Otherwise, he would have renovated the gate of Luochen Mountain to look better. There was a large group of disciples guarding the gate of Qingsong School. Everyone's expression was very serious, as if they were guarding against something. This made Mu Yu feel strange. He asked, "Is Qingsong School usually so heavily guarded?" Elder Zun was also a little puzzled. He shook his head and said, "No, Qingsong School is the world's #1 sect. Usually, they don't need so many disciples on guard. After all, no one dares to cause trouble here. When I left a few days ago, everything was fine. Do you want me to go and ask?" "No need. Let's go up the mountain directly." Mu Yu was not so polite. No matter how many guards there were, they were like decorations in front of Mu Yu. He took Elder Zun and disappeared through the gate. When they reappeared, they were already at the top of the mountain. This was the meeting hall square of Qingsong School. It was grand and magnificent. It was the foundation of Qingsong School. At this moment, many disciples were patrolling in the air on their swords. Everyone's expression was very serious. "Who are you?" "This is Qingsong School's restricted area. Unauthorized people are not allowed to trespass." 2 Qingsong School disciples saw Mu Yu's unfamiliar face. Their expressions suddenly changed. They immediately jumped over and scolded him as if they were facing a great enemy. As soon as they finished speaking, more Qingsong School disciples quickly surrounded them. Everyone pulled out their flying swords and pointed them at Mu Yu. Everyone's expression was very serious. "Stop. All of you, stop." Elder Zun quickly walked out from behind Mu Yu and scolded loudly. "Greetings, Elder Zun." All the disciples saw Elder Zun and immediately knelt down respectfully. This was a very strange phenomenon. All the Qingsong School disciples present were at the foundation establishment stage, but they knelt down and saluted Elder Zun, who was at the Qi refining stage. Those who didn't know would be shocked. However, these proud and arrogant disciples of Qingsong School didn't dare to say anything. Although Elder Zun's cultivation was only at the Qi refining stage, the Qingsong Taoist treated him as a guest of honor and ordered the other disciples not to slight Elder Zun. Because of the Falling Dust sect, Elder Zun's status in Qingsong School was now second only to the head of the school and the Qingsong Taoist. "Wow, Elder Zun, you're so impressive now." Mu Yu secretly laughed. Elder Zun was a little embarrassed. He whispered, "Don't laugh at me. It's all thanks to you." All the disciples of Qingsong School knew Elder Zun. There was no one who didn't know him, including the school's deacons and the cultivators' servants. A few years ago, when the Qingsong Taoist announced Elder Zun as an elder of Qingsong School, many disciples were unconvinced. After all the disciples of Qingsong School had more or less treated Elder Zun as a servant and ordered him around. Now that a servant had climbed over their heads and even asked them to kneel down and salute, how could the proud disciples of Qingsong School endure this? Therefore, someone disobeyed the order and humiliated Elder Zun. As a result, the Qingsong Taoist found out and immediately expelled that person from Qingsong School. Since then, no one dared to disrespect Elder Zun, even if he was just a rookie at the Qi refining stage. "Everyone, please rise." Xiao Shui held a chicken drumstick and jumped onto Elder Zun's shoulder. He belched and wagged his big tail. Mu Yu had a headache and pulled Xiao Shui back. This little guy really liked to take advantage of others. All of you, get up. Go and inform the headmaster that an important guest has arrived. Also, send someone to find Kong Kong and Miao Miao while you're at it. Elder Zun said in a dignified manner. Although he didn't have any real power in Qingsong School as an elder, his status was extraordinary and no one dared to offend him. This was enough for him. The two disciples hesitated and said, "Elder, it's not a problem to find Kong Kong and Miao Miao, but as for the headmaster, what's wrong with the headmaster?" Elder Zun frowned. The disciple hesitated for a while and said, "The headmaster is now discussing important matters with the other elders in the hall. He asked us to guard outside and not disturb them." Impudent. Is there anything more important than the matter of the venerable? Do you know who he is? Elder Zun rebuked angrily. Mu Yu patted Elder Zun's shoulder. The aura of the nascent soul stage swept through the hall, alarming a group of people from the Jindan period inside. This group of people was originally discussing something intensely, but they were frightened by Mu Yu's sudden nascent soul stage aura. Everyone's faces were filled with panic, and many of them had already stood up and flew outside. Mu Yu smiled and said, "No need, I've already informed him. He's already here." As he spoke, a figure flew out from the hall. Before the person arrived, his voice was already heard. "Venerable Mu Yu, we're honored by your presence. Please forgive us for not going out to meet you." Bai Liang landed in front of all the Qingsong School disciples and bowed to Mu Yu. Not only him, but a group of extremely senior Jindan period elders also followed behind him and bowed to Mu Yu. The aura of the nascent soul stage that Mu Yu deliberately emitted was very majestic. Everyone looked at Mu Yu in front of them in surprise and uncertainty, not knowing whether this person was an enemy or a friend. All of the Pine Tree sect's disciples were already stupefied. What ability did this young man who looked to be 17 or 18 years old have, to actually make their sect leader and those Aurus core elders of high status bow to him like this? Bai Liang was now the headmaster of Qingsong School and the leader of the entire cultivation world. Except for his master, the Qingsong Taoist, all the other cultivators had to bow their heads in front of him. However, the headmaster of Qingsong School, who was second only to one person and above tens of thousands of people, actually bowed to a young man. This wasn't a dream, right? Headmaster Bai Liang, you don't have to be so courteous. Where's the Qingsong Taoist? Mu Yu found it a little strange that he couldn't sense the aura of the Qingsong Taoist anywhere on the mountain. Bai Liang recognized Mu Yu. Back then, Mu Yu had left a deep impression on him during the competition at the Qingsong School. At such a young age, he was able to defeat many geniuses in the cultivation world. However, now that he saw Mu Yu's unfathomable cultivation level, he was even more shocked. This was because he could only sense the aura of Mu Yu from his master, the Qingsong Taoist. This was a real nascent soul stage supremacy, who was even more powerful than his master, the Qingsong Taoist. What kind of monsters did the Luo Chen sect raise? Bai Liang had already heard some things about the Luo Chen sect from the Qingsong Taoist. He also knew that the Luo Chen sect had a second senior brother named Luo Shong who even his master had to treat with respect. The Qingsong Taoist had already warned Bai Liang not to offend any of the Luo Chen sect's disciples. Today, when Mu Yu appeared here, he found it even harder to calm down. He didn't expect that there would be another nascent soul stage disciple among the Luo Chen sect's disciples. A complicated expression appeared on Bai Liang's face. After a while, he turned around and ordered the stunned disciples to leave. He then said, "Master is tied up with some matters and can't leave. Supremacy, please come in." Mu Yu sensed Bai Liang's expression and understood that the Qingsong Taoist had probably encountered some trouble. He then led Elder Zun and Bai Liang into the conference hall. There was a group of extremely senior Jindan period elders in the conference hall. They were all old fellows who took advantage of their seniority, but in front of Mu Yu, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They were quite shocked by the fact that Mu Yu was a nascent soul stage cultivator at such a young age. "Supremacy, please take a seat." Bai Liang gave his seat to Mu Yu. Mu Yu didn't refuse and directly sat down. Tell me, what kind of trouble has your master encountered? Mu Yu couldn't be bothered to beat around the bush and directly asked. Bai Liang sighed and glanced at Elder Zun, who was standing beside Mu Yu. He thought that Elder Zun wasn't an outsider, so he said, Supremacy, Master has indeed encountered some troublesome problems. If this matter isn't handled well, the Moyun mountain range may be turned upside down again. Oh, tell me about it. Mu Yu frowned. The Qingsong Taoist was the local tyrant in the Moyun mountain range. He was respected by tens of thousands of people. He could control the sky with one hand and summon the wind and rain. Other than the people from the Falling Dust sect who dared to cause trouble for the Qingsong Taoist, who else would cause trouble for the Qingsong Taoist? Bai Liang smiled bitterly and said, A while ago, a young man appeared in my room. His cultivation was really terrifying. He had actually reached the nascent soul stage. At that time, my master noticed it and immediately came out to stop him. His tone was very arrogant. He immediately issued a challenge to my master and asked him to find him in 7 days. He said that he wanted to settle a grudge. A young man at the nascent soul stage? Mu Yu pondered for a while, wondering if the people from the Gate of Hell had made a comeback. The Qingsong Taoist accepted the challenge? Mu Yu asked again. Bai Liang nodded and said, that person threatened that if he didn't go, he would kill every disciple of the Qingsong school who went out. Master had no choice but to agree. Last night, he left the Qingsong school to keep the appointment. Then why are you frowning? Mu Yu asked. Bai Liang said worriedly, before Master left, he told me that this person had an extremely strong murderous aura and that his cultivation was probably above his own. He also said that if he didn't come back, he must find a way to find Lord Feng Haochen of the Falling Dust sect and resolve this disaster. The spiritual qi in the Moyun mountain range was too thin and scattered. It was impossible for it to be enough for a person to break through to the nascent soul stage. Therefore, this person must have come from outside the Moyun mountain range. Who would have a grudge against the Qingsong Taoist outside the Moyun mountain range? The people from the Gate of Hell wouldn't be so polite as to issue a challenge to the Qingsong Taoist, so who could it be? Who is that person? Where did your master go now? Mu Yu asked. Chapter 262. There were a total of 20 sects in the Moyun mountain range, and each sect was now under the control of the Qingsong school. No one dared to challenge the authority of the Qingsong Taoist. Because the Qingsong Taoist was a nascent soul stage patriarch, he represented God in the Moyun mountain range. But today, someone came to challenge the god of the Moyun mountain range. The Qingsong Taoist looked around. He was now in the martial arts practice field of a sect. This sect was also affiliated with the Qingsong school. Even the head of the sect was personally appointed by the Qingsong Taoist. It's the Patriarch Qingsong, it's the Patriarch. That's great. We're saved. Patriarch, save me. Kill that arrogant demon. Patriarch, you have to uphold justice for us. The moment the Qingsong Taoist appeared, the sect, including the elders and disciples of the Jindan period, saw hope. They cheered and knelt down to welcome the arrival of the Qingsong Taoist. They all knew that their sect was saved. The appearance of the Qingsong Taoist was like a reassuring pill to them. Everyone believed that the Qingsong Taoist would bring the arrogant young man to justice. Then the young man slowly walked out and coldly glanced at the elders and disciples kneeling on the ground. His gaze was like the gaze of the god of death, and the air instantly became austere. Everyone stopped cheering and didn't dare to speak again because they felt as if a cold knife was placed on their necks. As long as they said one more word, their heads would fall to the ground. There was a new grave in the martial arts practice field. The soil on the grave was still wet. It was dug out by the young man with his own hands without using any tools. The grave was surrounded by white paper money. There was a tombstone in front of it, and 3 incense sticks were inserted under the tombstone. In front of the grave, 3 people were kneeling there in horror. They were the elders of the sect, and one of them was the head of the sect. The three of them were all at the sixth firmament of the Golden Core realm. Normally, they were lofty figures in the Moryun mountain range. However, under the oppression of the young man, they had no ability to resist. These three people's faces were very pale, and their bodies were covered with shocking wounds. When they looked at the young man's figure, it was as if they were looking at a heinous demon king. The Qingsong Taoist felt that this young man looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him before. His eyes fell on the tombstone and saw the words on it. Then, his pupils shrank. He understood the young man's identity. "Let them go," Qingsong Taoist said calmly. He was the emperor of the Moryun mountain range and had absolute authority. Even if the young man gave him the feeling that he was invincible, he still had to maintain his authority. The young man was very proud and aloof. He stood there like an unreachable mountain peak. The murderous intent he emitted made people shudder. He stared fixedly at the Qingsong Taoist, and the killing intent on his body grew stronger and stronger. "Defeat me, and they will live. Otherwise, you and the other three will be buried together with the people in the grave." He's too arrogant. How dare he be disrespectful to Ancestor Qingsong? Kill him. Long live Ancestor Qingsong. All the disciples began to shout, cursing the young man's insolence. No one had ever dared to speak to the Qingsong Taoist like this. They hoped that the Qingsong Taoist could show his power, take down the young man directly, and teach him a lesson for his arrogance. The Qingsong Taoist had already unsheathed his sword and pointed it at the young man. When he saw the inscription on the tombstone, he knew that today's battle was inevitable. Ancestor Qingsong has made his move. This arrogant boy is dead. The moment the Qingsong Taoist drew his sword, everyone was in awe. They had never seen the Qingsong Taoist make a move before. Since the disappearance of immortal Zhouhua, no one in the Moryun mountain range could compete with the Qingsong Taoist. No one dared to challenge the dignity of the nascent soul stage. As long as the Qingsong Taoist looked at him, even the sect leader of the ninth heaven of the gold core stage would have to kneel on the ground. However, they forgot that the young man who dared to challenge the Qingsong Taoist was also a nascent soul stage cultivator. A broadsword as heavy as a mountain came from the young man's hand. It was so heavy that it made people's breathing stop. Then the broadsword and the Qingsong Taoist's flying sword intertwined. A terrifying wave spread out with the two swords as the center, sending everyone flying. The fight between the two produced a huge destructive force. The ground was deeply cracked, gravel flew, and the plants were turned into powder. The fight between the two nascent soul stage cultivators turned all the facilities in the martial arts practice field into nothingness. Boom! The Qingsong Taoist's body smashed into the ground, creating a big pit. He panted slightly and held the Qingsong sword in his hand. His breathing was chaotic, and his hair, which was always neatly combed, was scattered. There was also a sword wound on his chest that was so deep that his bones could be seen. He had never been so embarrassed. Even when he was controlled by Luo Shong 4 years ago, Luo Shong had never hurt the Qingsong Taoist because of Chengyang and Qing Mai. Since Luo Shong and the others left the Moryun mountain range, no one could restrain him. Due to the power of the slave pill, he had to obey the people of the Luochen mountain, especially the unfathomable Feng Haochen. However, the people of the Luochen mountain stood aloof from worldly affairs and did not order him to do anything. Zhouhua Daoist disappeared mysteriously, and the Qingsong Taoist became the supreme cultivator of the Moryun mountain range. In the past few years, he had retreated behind the scenes and let Bai Liang manage the Qingsong school for him. He lived like a prince, enjoyed the happiness of family, and lived like an emperor. Other than the occasional visit to Feng Haochen, there was nothing else that could make his heart tremble. However, this person's arrival 5 days ago broke his peaceful life. He had no choice but to keep the appointment and fight to the death with the other party. But he lost. He already knew the result. Facing the person in front of him, he had no strength to fight back at all. This person's sword was too domineering. Every swing of the sword was as heavy as a mountain, which shocked the Qingsong Taoist. In particular, his body movement was extremely fast. There seemed to be no spiritual power fluctuations, but his sword was earth-shattering. His cultivation was so terrifying. Many people around looked at the young man in the air in horror. Like an indifferent demon king, he seriously injured the Qingsong Taoist with one sword and also ruthlessly shattered the hope in everyone's hearts. Their mighty patriarch Pine Tree came here, thinking that he could bring this rebellious young man to justice. No one expected that he would defeat the Qingsong Taoist so easily. He defeated the god in the hearts of the cultivators of the Moyun mountain range. Patriarch Pine Tree was defeated. Fear and despair began to spread deep in everyone's hearts. Their supreme patriarch Pine Tree could not withstand one move from the young man and was defeated so thoroughly. At first, they thought that Patriarch Pine Tree could defeat the young man and establish the supreme dignity of the Qingsong school. However, all of this was defeated by the austere young man in front of them. How could they resist someone who even venerable Pine Tree could not defeat? Could it be that this young man was going to change the dynasty of the Moyun mountain range today? The change of dynasty in the Moyun mountain range had happened once 4 years ago. At that time, the winner was the Qingsong Taoist. Because of this, the Qingsong Taoist became the respected venerable in the Moyun mountain range. However, Venerable Pine Tree had only been in power for 4 years before this young man appeared again. The change of dynasty could only be achieved by people with supreme cultivation. These small fries could only kneel down and surrender. In the cultivation world where strength was respected, they did not have the right to choose their king. It was strange that the fight between the two nascent soul stage cultivators was so destructive that the entire martial arts practice field was destroyed beyond recognition. Only this new tomb was not disturbed at all. Even the paper money was not damaged. Most of the people present knew this insufferably arrogant young man. Even the Qingsong Taoist had a deep impression of him. The young man, wearing mourning clothes, slowly landed beside the tomb. He silently stared at the words on the tombstone, which were carved by him personally. They were deep into the wood and powerful. Master Boyang Daren's tomb is erected by the unfilial disciple, Jiyu Etian. That's right. This young man, who looked like a killing god, was the dark horse in the competition at the Qingsong school. He was also the disciple of Boyang Daoren of the Qiantian school, Jiyu Etian. The Qingsong Taoist was now in the Qiantian school. This school used to be the second last. Later, it won the second place by relying on a dark horse. Originally, when he thought that Gantian sect was about to flourish, the Pine Tree Daoist stepped into the nascent soul stage and reshuffled the cultivation world, destroying this small sect's hopes. Daoist Boyang also met with a calamity. The young man in front of him was the dark horse of the past. He was the invincible Jiyu Etian of the younger generation in the Moyun mountain range. In the end, it was Daoist Bo Yang who asked him to go easy on him that caused him to lose to the Pine Tree sect disciple. However, after a few years, Jiyu Etian surprisingly stepped into the nascent soul stage. When he returned to the Qiantian school and wanted to find his master, he learned that Boyang Daren's arm had been cut off by a traitor and he had disappeared. He was afraid that his soul had returned to the ninth heaven. Jiyu Etian was furious and severely punished the traitors of the Qiantian school. Those who betrayed their master and ancestors had already become ghosts under his sword. He couldn't cultivate since he was a child. However, Boyang Daoren saw that he had a firm mind and took him in to walk the path of body cultivation. The path of body cultivation was difficult and dangerous. Ordinary people couldn't imagine it. At that time, the cultivation world in the Moyun mountain range was in chaos. He had to choose to leave the Qiantian school. After going through untold hardships, he walked out of the Moyun mountain range. Under the guidance of a master, he stepped into the nascent soul stage. When he returned to the Moyun mountain range to find his master, he learned that his master had died. Jiyu Etian personally built a tomb in the martial arts practice field of the Qiantian school. It was an empty tomb. He couldn't find Boyang Daren's body, so he wanted to find someone to be buried with him. He issued a challenge to the Qingsong Taoist and invited him to his master's tomb. He wanted to defeat the Supreme Venerable in the Moyun mountain range in front of everyone and let him apologize in front of his master's tomb. Because it was the Qingsong Taoist who destroyed the future of the Chentian school and caused his master's accident. He didn't know when his master passed away. The day he came back and learned the news of Boyang Daren's accident, he treated it as the anniversary of Boyang Daren's death. Today was the 7th day of his death. Kneel in front of my master's tomb and kowtow to apologize. Then kill yourself to apologize, and I'll let go of the other people in the Qingsong school, Jiu Yiqian said calmly. The broadsword in his hand sank into the ground. That sword made everyone present so scared that their legs went soft. Your master's death has nothing to do with me. The Qingsong Taoist stared at Jiu Yiqian. He never thought that the body cultivator would grow to the point where he could defeat him one day. What had he encountered in the years when he disappeared? How could his cultivation improve by leaps and bounds? Jiu Yiqian's eyes flashed. He said, if it weren't for you, how could the Chentian school have changed? How could my master have died? You have sinned deeply. How many innocent self-cultivators have you killed for your own power? You should have known that someone would come to deal with you one day. The Qingsong Taoist smiled bitterly. Although he had lived a good life in the past few years, it was all given to him by someone else, including his cultivation. Even now, he was someone else's servant. He used to be a brave and resourceful person. Luo Shong gave him a chance to unify the entire Moyun mountain range. This was his dream, and he had never regretted it. To achieve great things, blood must be shed, and blood must make enemies. He thought that with his cultivation, he didn't have to worry about anything. Jiu Yiqian's arrival made him realize that he should be vigilant in times of peace. Just kill me. I won't kneel to Boyang Daren. The Qingsong Taoist was unafraid of death. In the past, because of his daughter, he had no choice but to kneel at Luo Shong's feet. But now, Qingmai and Chengyang had gone far away, so he had nothing to worry about. He had unified the entire Moyun mountain range and become the supreme venerable. He was respected by thousands of people and enjoyed great glory. Even if he died, he would have no regrets. Then I will personally use your blood as a sacrifice to my master. The broadsword soared into the sky and appeared in front of the Qingsong Taoist in the blink of an eye. The blade flashed with a cold light and swept toward the Qingsong Taoist's neck. Chapter 263. Clang. The 3-foot-long sword knocked away the insufferably arrogant broadsword, and dispersed the biting cold murderous aura like a startled swan, pulling the pine Daoist back from the gates of hell. A figure slowly appeared beside the Qingsong Taoist. His expression was very calm and he didn't change at all because of Jiu Yiqian's appearance. After a long time, the Qingsong Taoist found that he was still alive. He was stunned for a moment and opened his eyes. When he saw another young man standing beside him, his face was full of shock. You are. The Qingsong Taoist's voice trembled. He looked at the new young man in disbelief. His steady and thick aura was more than 100 times stronger than his. He was also a nascent soul cultivator. Senior Qingsong, are you okay? Mu Yu smiled at the Qingsong Taoist. After all, the Qingsong Taoist was Chengyan's father-in-law, and Chengyang was Mu Yu's senior brother. Therefore, Mu Yu still treated the Qingsong Taoist as a senior. You are Mu Yu. The Qingsong Taoist came to his senses and his eyes were filled with ecstasy. You have also stepped into the nascent soul stage? When he said this, even the Qingsong Taoist felt that it was unbelievable. He had wasted his life in the Moyun mountain range and only stepped into the nascent soul stage with the help of Luo Shong. However, these two people walked out of the Moyun mountain range and became stronger than him in just a few years. Why was this? He glanced at Jiu Yiqian and then at Mu Yu. These two youths had once shone brilliantly in the competition, but at this moment, their cultivations had actually surpassed his. Don't worry. With me here, no one can hurt you. Mu Yu put his hand on the Qingsong Taoist's shoulder. Majestic spiritual power in his hand continuously flowed into the Qingsong Taoist's body, dispelling the arrogant sword qi in the Qingsong Taoist's body. Then, he looked at Jiu Yiqian. I remember you. You and I still owe each other a competition. Jiu Yiqian recognized Mu Yu, but his expression was calm. He wasn't surprised that Mu Yu had become a nascent soul stage cultivator. If Mu Yu was only a Jindan period cultivator, he would be surprised. In the past, in the competition of the Pine Tree sect, Mu Yu had been defeated by Jiyu Etian. However, Jiyu Etian had never acknowledged that battle. He knew that Mu Yu deliberately went easy, and the Qingsong Taoist and Zhenren Zhouhua stepped into the nascent soul stage. And the Moyun mountain range began reshuffling, so he didn't find any opportunity to fight with Mu. I just want revenge. After revenge, I will fight with you seriously. Jiyu Etian looked coldly at the Qingsong Taoist behind Mu Yu. The murderous intent in his eyes didn't diminish at all. Mu Yu frowned. Where did this hatred come from? It was his desire that indirectly caused my master's death. Jiyu Etian waved his hand and the broadsword returned to his hand. If the Qingsong Taoist didn't want to annex all the sects in the Moyun mountain range after stepping into the nascent soul stage, then the Qiantian school would gradually walk towards glory under the leadership of Boyang Daoren. However, that reshuffle caused Gantian sect's dream of rising to the top to collapse. Mu Yu laughed. His laughter was very playful. He looked at Jiyu Etian and couldn't help but admire Jiyu Etian. Jiyu Etian walked the path of a body cultivator. That path was extremely difficult to walk. He relied on his tenacity to walk out of the Moyun mountain range where demon beasts roamed freely. This courage made Mu Yu admire him. A trace of anger appeared on Jiyu Etian's face. What are you laughing at? You're always so one-track-minded. You want to challenge people at the drop of a hat, as if everyone owes you something. If your master knew that you built a nondescript grave for him, he would definitely break your legs in anger. Mu Yu still couldn't hide the smile on his face. In the past, Boyang Daoren had been injured by people from the Zhouhua school. At that time, Zhu Wenxing had brought Boyang Daoren, who had lost an arm, to the Luochen sect to make an example out of him. However, the Luochen sect wasn't something that a small character like Zhu Wenxing could covet. He was directly captured and humiliated by Mu Yu and the others. Boyang Daoren was also rescued. I always thought that you were an opponent worthy of me taking seriously. I didn't expect you to be so shallow. Anyone who disrespects my master deserves to die. Jiyu Etian was finally enraged. He didn't understand the meaning behind Mu Yu's words and thought that Mu Yu was mocking him. He was instantly enraged and swung his broadsword at him. Mu Yu dodged, and the broadsword followed him like a shadow. However, his footwork changed a lot, and he dodged the broadsword's edge. Why didn't you fight back? Jiyu Etian asked angrily. Because I don't want to compete with someone who is blinded by hatred. I know that the competition in the past was insulting you. I've always wanted to have a fair fight with you without any burdens or worries. I don't have to go easy on anyone, and I don't have to fight for anyone. It's just a pure competition. However, your state of mind is unstable now. You're no match for me at all. Even if I win, I won't feel that it's a fair fight. Mu Yu's figure flickered, and the broadsword couldn't touch him at all. A sword user's greatest fear was an unstable sword heart. Jiyu Etian's heart was in chaos. His master's death had been a great blow to him, and Mu Yu's words had provoked his anger. His swordsmanship had long since become chaotic, and he no longer had any sense of propriety. It was impossible for him to catch up to Mu Yu. However, the hatred in his heart didn't dissipate because of Mu Yu's words. On the contrary, his endless anger grew stronger and stronger, and the hostility of the broadsword in his hand grew stronger. Anyone who stands in my way of revenge must die. Jiyu Etian roared, and his broadsword stabbed at Mu Yu again. Your master isn't dead. What revenge are you taking? Mu Yu said slowly. The broadsword stopped an inch away from Mu Yu. Mu Yu's words made Jiyu Etian freeze in place, as if he had been struck by lightning. What did you say? Jiyu Etian's sword moved forward another inch. Your master isn't dead, but you built a grave for him. Do you think he'll break your legs if he finds out? Mu Yu shook his head helplessly. How is that possible? You're lying to me. Jiyu Etian's sword trembled slightly. He really hoped that Mu Yu's words were true, But everyone in the Qiantian school had already confirmed that Boyang Daren's arm had been cut off in public. He had been taken away and there had been no news of him since. Everyone thought he was dead. What? From your tone, it seems that you want your master to die before you're satisfied. What nonsense are you talking about? Jiyu Etian scolded angrily. The broadsword in his hand moved forward a third time, and it was already at Mu Yu's neck. The cold light pierced his skin, making Mu Yu feel very uncomfortable. Tian stop. Boyang Daren's voice came from behind Jiyu Etian. The moment that familiar voice rang out, Jiyu Etian felt as if he had been struck by lightning. The broadsword in his hand fell. He turned around abruptly and saw Boyang Daren in mortal clothes. He looked like an old man from the countryside. He didn't have the majesty of a sect leader in the past. His left arm was empty. He stood there, but Jiyu Etian's eyes immediately turned red. Master! Jiyu Etian was stunned. He fought outside the Moyun mountain range and tried his best to become stronger so that he could come back and help his master bring the Qiantian school to glory. However, after he finished his studies and returned, he was shocked to hear the news of his master's death. It almost made him collapse. Now that his master had appeared in front of him, he felt like he was dreaming. Boyang Daren also looked at Jiyu Etian. This disciple who had always made him proud was now no match for the Qingsong Taoist. If Elder Zun and Bai Liang hadn't found him, he wouldn't have known that his disciple had returned. Looking at Jiyu Etian, a proud expression appeared on his face. The proudest thing in life was that his disciple had surpassed his master. In the past, Boyang Daren had been rescued by Mu Yu and the others in the Luo Chen sect. Those who knew that he was still alive were later killed by perfected Zhouhua's sword. Therefore, except for the people of the Luo Chen sect, everyone thought that Boyang Daren was dead. At that time, he had chosen to leave the Luo Chen sect and live in seclusion in the mountains. Only Elder Zun knew his whereabouts. Fortunately, Elder Zun was able to find him today. Master. Jiyu Etian walked to Boyang Daren's side and knelt down heavily. He buried his head in Boyang Daren's feet, his body trembling. Even a man of steel had a soft side. His master was everything to him. He was also the reason why he had become stronger in the past few years. Every time he wanted to give up, he would remember that his master was still trapped in the Qiantian school. He couldn't fall. When he found out about his master's death, he was so furious that he wanted to bury everyone with him. It wasn't until his master appeared in front of him that the hatred in his heart gradually faded. Get up. You're a nascent soul cultivator now. Don't kneel so easily. Boyang Daren was filled with emotion as he helped Jiyu Etian up. As a master, he was proud of his disciple's achievements. Now, he didn't need to be afraid when facing the nascent soul cultivator Qingsong Taoist. His disciple wasn't any weaker than the Qingsong Taoist. Master, it's good that you're fine. Jiyu Etian wasn't good with words. He liked to keep everything in his heart. A man doesn't cry easily. His spiritual power shook and the tears at the corners of his eyes dissipated. Master, Boyang Daren's tomb. Why is my name written on this tomb? Brat, are you cursing your master to die? Boyang Daren read the words on the tombstone. His face darkened and he slapped Jiyu Etian. Jiyu Etian didn't dodge. Boyang Daren couldn't really hit him. Even if he did, it wouldn't hurt him. The master was still the same master and the disciple was still the same disciple. When the master taught the disciple a lesson, the disciple shouldn't resist. The broadsword moved again. The empty tomb turned into powder and disappeared from the martial arts field. Boyang Daren already knew what happened. He knew that Jiyu Etian did everything to avenge him. But at this moment, nothing was important. What was important was that Boyang Daren could finally hold his head high in the cultivation world. It was a great blessing in his life to have such a powerful disciple. Mu Yu looked at Jiyu Etian and suddenly found that he and Jiyu Etian had a lot in common. Both of them worked hard to save their master and wanted to compete with each other fair and square. They didn't like the deception of the cultivation world. The only difference was that Jiyu Etian had succeeded in what he wanted to do. With him, Boyang Daoren would no longer be hurt. However, Mu Yu's master was nowhere to be found. Jiyu Etien's opponents were just a few insignificant people in the Moyun mountain range. Mu Yu's opponent was the supreme ruler of the entire Sanchong continent, the mysterious Sanchong Palace. Mu Yu still had a long way to go. Let's go. Let's catch up. Tian you should also apologize to Venerable Qing Song, haha. Boyang Daoren's hearty laughter covered the entire Qiantian school. This was the happiest thing for him in many years. Senior Qing Song, I was rash. Jiyu Etian didn't disobey. He silently walked to Qing Song Taoist and bowed. He was a one-track mind. A mistake was a mistake. Since his master asked him to apologize, he really did apologize to Qing Song Taoist. After all, the cultivation world belongs to the younger generation. I didn't lose unjustly. Qing Song Taoist sighed. Whether it was Mu Yu or Jiyu Etian, their strength had deeply impressed Qing Song Taoist. He knew that with his current cultivation, he was just an ordinary cultivator outside the Moyun mountain range. Qing Song Taoist turned to Boyang Daoren and said with a wry smile, Brother Boyang, you've got a good disciple. You're too kind. Brother Qing Song, you flatter me. Boyang Daoren's face was full of joy. He looked at Jiyu Etian with a proud expression. Ever since the Green Pine Daoist entered the nascent soul stage, he could only address the Green Pine Daoist respectfully. But now, his disciple had also become a nascent soul supremacy and defeated the unreachable Green Pine Daoist. As a result, his status as a master naturally rose as well. Although he was saying polite words, he was very proud in his heart. How could he have thought that he would be on equal footing with Qing Song Taoist one day? Lord Boyang, please spare my life. I deserve to die. I deserve to die. The people of Qiantian school who saw that Boyang Daoren was still alive looked as if they had seen a ghost. They had all done disgraceful things to Boyang Daoren and even helped outsiders frame Boyang Daoren. Now the cultivation of Boyang Daoren's disciple was even higher than that of the mighty Qing Song Taoist. They were so scared that their faces turned ashen. They knelt down and begged for mercy like dirty slugs. Jiyu Etian didn't kill them because Boyang Daoren didn't allow him to kill people at will. Some small characters couldn't be seen in public. Killing them would only dirty his hands. Catch up with your master. I'll wait for you tomorrow. Mu Yu looked at Jiyu Etian. Jiyu Etian had been wandering outside for a long time. Naturally, he had a lot to say to his master. Just like Mu Yu, he also had a lot of questions to ask his master. If the two of them wanted to have a real duel, they should let their hearts have no more worries. Mu Yu had obtained something that could help his master recover his cultivation. Coupled with the existence of the immortal confining prison, nothing would happen to his master. Therefore, he had nothing to worry about. The Qiantian school held a big banquet. With everyone's unanimous approval, Boyang Daoren, who didn't have a high cultivation, sat at the head of the table. Mu Yu and Jiyu Etian were next. Next were the Qing Song Taoist, Bai Liang, and Old Zun, who had the lowest cultivation. Then, Hong Yang and Hao Yingjun, who had gotten the news from somewhere, rushed over. Hong Yang and Hao Yingjun, who had been quarreling with each other, had gotten married and had a son. People were in high spirits. The atmosphere of the Qiantian school changed from austere to jubilant. Xiao Shui even bought all the meat at the banquet. Hao Shui also came over. She still looked like a love-struck little girl. During the banquet, she kept staring at Jiyu Etian. Unfortunately, Jiyu Etian was a blockhead and didn't understand Hao Shui's feelings. The team from Mount Fu Long gathered again. It was just that Cheng Yang was missing. Tomorrow, let's have a good fight. Chapter 264. A light breeze blew, and the fallen leaves fluttered in the wind, blowing past their clothes. One of them was valiant and heroic, like a free and unfettered wanderer. He was relaxed and carefree, and the shadow in his hand bloomed with green light like a clear spring. The other was proud and cold, with a determined expression. His broadsword was as black as ink, suffused with a cold murderous aura. The Qiantian school was very solemn this morning. 2 top swordsmen of the Moyun mountain range stood here, about to end the unfinished duel. In the Qingsong school's sect competition, the Falling Dust sect and the Qiantian school were ranked first and second from the bottom respectively. Everyone thought that these 2 sects were a joke. However, these 2 sects that were looked down upon by others had actually produced 2 stunning dark horses. Mu Yu of the Falling Dust sect defeated Xiao Hu of the Qingsong school, while Jiyu Etian of the Qiantian school went straight ahead and was invincible. Unfortunately, when the 2 dark horses fought against each other, Mu Yu chose to lose due to special reasons. This also became a pity between the 2 dark horses. No one would have thought that after a few years, the 2 dark horses from the laughable sects would be able to trample the Moyun mountain range under their feet. Even the high and mighty Qingsong Taoist was no match for them. Today was the time for the 2 dark horses to fairly determine the winner. A cold light streaked across the void, and sword energy filled the sky. It was like the surging Milky Way, endlessly growing and multiplying. However, the broadsword only had the simplest move. When the sword struck out, it transformed into thousands of illusions. It was like a sea-stabilizing needle in the surging waves, majestic and solid. The 2 figures crossed each other in the air, drowning in the sword light that filled the sky. Majestic auras shot out in all directions, and the air became scorching hot. Waves of energy swept out, leaving shocking marks on the ground. Falling dragon roaring to the sky. The 5th move of the Falling Dust sword technique, Falling Dragon Roaring to the Sky, transformed into a tangible form, and was both illusory and real. The 5 flying swords carried Mu Yu and soared into the sky. Under the guidance of the flying swords, the spiritual energy around his body turned into 5 huge green dragons. The gigantic dragon coiled around the shadow sword. It had a majestic dragon head, curvy dragon scales, and a nimble dragon tail. It let out a long roar towards the sky. The dragon's might was vast and mighty, as if it wanted to devour everything in the world. No one dared to act rashly. The broadsword was as fast as lightning, leaving a thin crack in the air. It shattered the void and slashed down with the force of 1,000 catties. Black light burst out and collided with the giant dragon. Boom! The earth quaked and the mountains shook. The original infant stage's all-out battle turned the surroundings into a mess. Smoke and dust filled the air and it was difficult to tell who was the winner. The giant dragon dispersed, but the broadsword was still there, and the shadow was still there. The 2 of them had already switched positions, and were looking at each other indifferently. The onlookers, on the other hand, were overwhelmed with emotions. They were deeply shocked by the auras of these 2. When did the 2 of them become so powerful? Bai Liang sighed inwardly. He was originally the leader of the younger generation in the Moyun mountain range. Unfortunately, there was always someone better. The 2 dark horses had already surpassed him. Now, even if he was the head of the Qingsong school and could summon the wind and rain, he was still nothing in front of these 2 people. Jiyu Etian's sword is steady and powerful. It's simple yet domineering. He relied on the purest brute force to exert the sword power to the extreme. Physical cultivators are indeed terrifying. Qingsong Taoist nodded slightly. He had already experienced the most primitive power, which made him unable to fight back at all. In yesterday's battle, he admitted defeat wholeheartedly. Mu Yu's sword is free and natural. It's as if it's one. The sword power is profound and it negates Tian Er's great strength. I've said before that the Luo Chen sect's sword technique is unfathomable. It's really rare in the world. Even Tian Er can't take advantage of it. Boyang Daoren stroked his beard and praised. The people present did not know what kind of fortuitous encounters these 2 dark horses had encountered in the past few years. However, it was obvious to all that their cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. Their cultivation was already so terrifying at such a young age. Their future was limitless. You really didn't disappoint me. Jiyu Etian stared at the shadow in Mu Yu's hand and said softly. Back in the competition at the Qingsong school, he knew that Mu Yu would not be defeated so easily. He was a dignified swordsman who pursued an open and above-board competition. With his character, He would rather die in the hands of others than take advantage of others. In the past, he had never had the chance to fight with Mu Yu. It had become a barrier in his heart. Mu Yu looked at the broadsword in Jiyu Etien's hand. His heart was filled with doubts. Your sword reminds me of someone. That person's sword technique has reached the acme of perfection. However, his sword moves are very simple. Who is that person you're talking about? Jiyu Etien asked. The Nameless Swordsman. Mu Yu vaguely remembered the competition between the Nameless Swordsman and the Genius Swordsman of the Sword-Cleansing Valley, Yuanjian. The Nameless Swordsman's sword reached the sky. He used only one move to kill the genius of the Sword-Cleansing Valley. Jiyu Etien's expression changed slightly. After a while, he said, Senior Nameless saved my life and gave me pointers on sword technique. My sword technique did come from his guidance. Mu Yu suddenly understood. No wonder Jiyu Etien's sword technique had become so superb in the past few years. It turned out that he had been taught by the Nameless Swordsman. Before Pojian left, he had instilled a sword intent into Mu Yu's body. That sword intent had helped him several times. So, the Nameless Swordsman is your master? Jiyu Etien shook his head. I don't want to take him as my master, and he doesn't want to take me as his disciple. We just met by chance. He just gave me a chance. Mu Yu nodded. He suddenly understood and focused his attention on the sword technique again. Feng Haochen had once told him that the Great Tao was simple. Thousands of sword techniques could not compare to the power of one sword. The ninth move of the Luo Chen sword technique was called 9-9-1. 9 swords into 1, and 1 sword into 9. In the battle with Gui Shenyu, Feng Haochen had used his golden core cultivation to combine 9 swords into 1 to shatter Gui Xuanyue's body. The power of the Luo Chen sword technique was self-evident. But now, Mu Yu could only transform 5 flying swords. He was still far from Feng Haochen's sword intent. Therefore, he had been unable to unleash the power of the 9th move of the Luo Chen sword technique. However, what made Mu Yu feel strange was that whether it was the Nameless Swordsman or Jiyu Etien, their simple sword aura was so similar to the Luo Chen sword technique. However, the Luo Chen sword technique was more exquisite and powerful. Their sword techniques were simpler. It was as if they only took one ladle out of thousands of weak water. But when this ladle was unleashed to the extreme, it was already extremely terrifying. The Luo Chen sword technique's original name was Heaven Sword 9 Guides. It was recognized as the #1 sword technique in the cultivation world. Unfortunately, Mu Yu had only scratched the surface. You only use one sword. I also have one sword. Let's decide the winner with one sword. How about it? As the disciple of Sword Shadow Chen Feng, Mu Yu had the strongest sword aura. Yet, he could not unleash the full power of Heaven Sword 9 Guides. This was a disgrace to the name of Heaven Sword 9 Guides. His heart was filled with pride. Jiyu Etien had used the simplest sword technique to defeat him. It was time for him to clear the name of Heaven Sword 9 Guides. He would not use the sword intent of this broken sword in the following battle. That would be too laughable. One sword to decide the winner. Good. Jiyu Etien's eyes lit up. Mu Yu had 9 nimble sword techniques. He was not confident that he could defeat him. Both of them used swords. Deciding the winner with one sword was naturally the fairest battle. Jiyu Etien raised his heavy broadsword and pointed it at Mu Yu. The sword hummed softly and emitted a black light. His aura continued to climb. His sword was the same as his personality. It was cold and arrogant. It was like a piece of cold iron on a lonely mountain peak. It was cold and murderous. No one dared to underestimate its edge. Mu Yu's shadow split into 5. Each shadow performed the Heaven Sword 9 Guides. They grew and multiplied endlessly. Mu Yu's footsteps flickered as 5 human silhouettes appeared. Each of the silhouettes controlled the 5 sword silhouettes. The sword silhouettes weaved and weaved, restraining each other but also separating from each other. The shadow swords became faster and faster. They gradually condensed into a single point. At the same time, Mu Yu's eyes lit up. The 5 shadow swords merged into one. A terrifying aura exploded with the sword as the center. Man and sword became one. The two of them stabbed forward at the same time. The speed of their swords was so slow that everyone present could clearly see their movements. Everyone could even think of a way to break it in an instant. But every time a solution formed in the minds of these people, they would be shocked to find that the swords of these two people had already changed. The simplest sword was ever changing, and they couldn't find any loopholes at all. If they wanted to break it, they would have to be even more domineering than the first sword. Boom! Sword auras shot out in all directions. The shadow swords and broadswords collided. Tiny cracks appeared in the surrounding void. The cracks disappeared in an instant. The two swords exploded with shocking auras. They confronted each other in the air for a long time. The murderous aura and the freehand style eroded each other. They wanted to outdo each other. However, neither of them was willing to give in. The sword auras had already turned the surroundings into thousands of ravines. Then, the two of them retreated and slowly put their swords away. Mu Yu looked at Jiu Etian. Jiu Etian also looked at him. Sparks flew from their gazes. Their battle-intent soared. They were tit for tat. "You are very strong," Mu Yu said. "So are you," Jiu Etian replied. Catcher. The sound of cracking was clearly heard by everyone. The broadsword in Jiu Etian's hand had already cracked. Mu Yu's sword aura had already invaded Jiu Etian's broadsword. Jiu Etian's body felt numb. It took a long time for him to force out Mu Yu's sword aura. "If you had a good sword, you might not have lost," Mu Yu said lightly. Mu Yu won. His sword aura was better. As the most powerful sword technique in the cultivation world, the 9 guides of the heavenly sword lived up to its reputation. It was like the most primitive sword technique. It was simple but sharp and unstoppable. Although Jiu Etian's sword had a courageous momentum, it still lacked a simple and deep sword will compared to the 9 guides of the heavenly sword. He lost to the 9 guides of the heavenly sword. Jiu Etian shook his head. Winning or losing is never a matter of whether the sword is good or bad. If a person has a sword in his heart, the sword in his hand is a good sword. I accept my loss wholeheartedly. Just like the nameless swordsman, Jiu Etian also believed in his broadsword. It was a simple iron sword, but in his hand, it was a close friend. When he believed in his friend, even the simplest sword would become extraordinary. Just as Jiu Etian said, he didn't lose because of the quality of his sword. He lost because of his understanding of the sword technique. The result of the belated competition was finally revealed. However, their victory was only temporary. The future was still far away. People who used swords wouldn't admit defeat so easily. Senior Nameless will kill the person who left a gap in his iron sword. So will I. Jiu Etian carried his sword on his back. He glanced at Mu Yu and walked toward Boyang Daoren. Chapter 265. Jiu Etian left the Chentian school with Boyang Daoren. Boyang Daoren didn't want to care about the Chentian school anymore. He would rather be an ordinary person. However, Jiu Etian wouldn't. He still had a long way to go. He said that after accompanying Boyang Daoren for a while, he would leave the Moyun mountain range. His path was not here. Mu Yu returned to the Qingsong school. Kong Kong and Miao Miao had grown tall, but their mischievous characters hadn't changed. The two of them had already started cultivating. After leaving the Moyun mountain range, Mu Yu found out that people outside the Moyun mountain range started cultivating when they were very young. They didn't have to wait until they were 12 years old to start cultivating. When he was in the Moyun mountain range, because the cultivation conditions here were backward, the school's spirit testing stone could only measure the cultivation talent of a 12-year-old child. Therefore, the age of cultivation in the Moyun mountain range was 12 years old, which was slower than the outside world. Kong Kong and Miao Miao actually started cultivating 2 years ago. Now, they were only 9 years old, but their cultivation had already reached the first layer of foundation establishment. Their talent was not inferior to Mu Yu's. You too should behave yourselves in other people's schools. Don't make a mess. Muyu said helplessly. The two restless guys were entrusted by their master to stay in the Qingsong school. The Qingsong Taoist ordered that no one was allowed to neglect them. Therefore, no matter what the two did, no one dared to interfere. Therefore, from time to time, they would make the whole Qingsong school a mess, which was quite troublesome. Recently, Xiao Shuai and them formed a troublesome 2.5-man group. Xiao Shuai was considered half a man. The group committed crimes and caused trouble, and the whole Qingsong school was almost overturned. This 2.5-man group even dared to make fun of the Qingsong Taoist. Every time, the Qingsong Taoist would only be magnanimous and scold them a little. There was nothing he could do. If you all leave, no one will play with us. The students of Qingsong school are too useless. They can't stop our sneak attack at all, Kong Kong said discontentedly. That's right. Teasing them is no challenge at all. It's not like teasing you guys in the past where I had to go through so much trouble. Meow Meow scratched her head. Finally, the two of them were no longer walking around in just their undergarments. Instead, they were wearing children's clothing that fit their bodies. They were very cute. Muyu couldn't help but chuckle. Thinking back to when he was at Dustfall Mountain, these two had tried their best to harass others while they cultivated, but they had all failed. Everyone knew how to deal with these two fellows. Now in Qingsong school, they were like two young masters. With the Qingsong Taoist's instructions, no one dared to provoke them, so they could only blame their bad luck if they were teased. In addition, their cultivation talent was too high, so everyone could only turn a blind eye to them. Did Master say when he'll be back? Muyu asked. Kong Kong and Meow Meow shook their heads and said dejectedly, Master said that the place he's going to is very dangerous and might take a long time. He doesn't want us to follow him, so we can only follow Elder Zun. Then you two listen to Elder Zun obediently. You can bully anyone, but you're not allowed to tease Elder Zun. Do you understand? Muyu reminded. We don't dare. Elder Zun's old arms and legs aren't even enough for a meal. If something happens, there won't be anyone to sleep with us at night. That would be terrible. You know that Kong Kong is afraid of the dark. Meow Meow made a face at Elder Zun. Elder Zun smiled helplessly. Taking care of two restless children was also a headache. However, it was also a blessing to have two children accompany him in his old age. Elder Zun also took care of them like his own children. Fortunately, although the two of them were mischievous, they knew their limits. Just like how Kong Kong and Meow Meow would tease anyone but Feng Haochen in the past, now that Elder Zun was taking care of them, they wouldn't tease Elder Zun. Bah, you're the younger sister. Why are you afraid of the dark? Kong Kong said unhappily. You're afraid of the dark. You're the one who's afraid of the dark. The two of them started quarreling again. Muyu felt a headache coming on. The two of them were quite interesting. They had climbed cliffs, walked over cliffs, poked a hornet's nest, and bombed toilets. They had done all kinds of mischievous things, but they were actually afraid of the dark. Muyu, are you still going to leave? Elder Zun asked. Muyu nodded. The immortal confining prison hadn't been lifted yet, so he couldn't stay here any longer. Now that he had found the 9-chi soul cleansing flower and the netherworld grass, he wanted to find Deadwood and ask him how to deal with these two herbs. At the same time, he wanted to find Xie Bulao. Since his master went to find this person to stop the demons, then as long as Muyu found this person, he should be able to find his master's whereabouts. Muyu stayed at Qingsong school for a few days. Then, he bid farewell to the Qingsong Taoist and returned to Flowing Water Village. Village chief Old Bu was still hale and hearty. He pulled the little wimps along and told stories all day long. Naturally, the story he talked about the most was Muyu's story. At this moment, Muyu's story had already been exaggerated by the village chief into several versions. It included how Muyu caused havoc in the East Sea, how Muyu skinned and pulled out the dragon's tendons, how Muyu moved the mountain and opened up a path for the villagers, and how Muyu beat the white chicken 3 times to protect the peace in all directions. Today, I'll tell you the story of how Muyu caused havoc in the Immortal Palace. It was said that among the high and mighty immortal masters, there was an immortal emperor who ruled over the entire Immortal Palace. One day, the immortal emperor found that Mu Yu's appearance was a threat to his position. This was not something he could tolerate. In the beginning, he wanted to recruit Mu Yu, but he only gave him the position of a small stable boy. Our Mu Yu's strength was monstrous, so how could he be willing to lower himself to such a small position? Thus, he shouted out, kings, generals, ministers, generals, and generals are all equal. The immortal emperor took turns to be the next year. Then, he began to walk on the path of unyielding resistance. Mu Yu was dumbfounded as he listened to the village chief's eloquent speech. The village chief's ability to bluff once again overturned his worldview. After listening to these stories, Mu Yu felt that he was not only in the sky, but also standing shoulder to shoulder with the sun. When Mu Yu appeared in front of village chief Old Bu, the village chief was so excited that he almost jumped up. He quickly and proudly introduced Mu Yu to all the children. Big brother Mu Yu, is what Grandpa village chief said true? All the children stared at Mu Yu with eyes full of excitement. This should be, maybe, probably, maybe. Mu Yu found it hard to say. If he admitted it, then it would be a double act between the old and young swindlers. It's true, Mu Yu, quickly say it's true. This old man is begging you. Don't tell me you want this old man to kneel down. The village chief begged in a low voice. He winked at Mu Yu and wanted him to personally confirm the authenticity of these stories. At first, Mu Yu refused. Later, when he saw the village chief's tearful eyes and his majestic aura was about to sweep the floor in front of the children, he could only shamefully admit these great achievements. Afterwards, his face burned with shame. I am a good youth with 3 virtues, 4 virtues, and 5 beauties. I have always adhered to the principle of doing things with a clear conscience. I didn't expect to fall into the hands of the village chief. Aya, this is nothing. What Grandpa village chief told you is just a small matter. Come, let me tell you all about the thrilling life and death adventures that happened in the past few years. Little Shuai jumped out of Mu Yu's arms and jumped onto the village chief's head. Then, he stood on his hind legs and placed one of his forelimbs on his waist while the other kept waving. He passionately told everyone the story of how he massacred Fujian Island, became famous in the Danding sect, and became famous in the second heaven. Oh right, in Little Shuai's story, the main character was not Mu Yu, but himself. Let me tell you. At that time, Mu Yu was entangled by a demon beast and couldn't get away. The situation was very dangerous and he was about to be swallowed by the demon beast. At the critical moment, I angrily rushed out, turned into a flash of light, and rushed into the demon beast's mouth. I had to sacrifice myself. If I wasn't eaten by the demon beast, then Mu Yu would be eaten. The two of us went through life and death together. How could I bear to see him be eaten by the demon beast? I softly said to Mu Yu, "Oh, goodbye, my brother, we will meet again in the next life." Mu Yu, a big man, actually cried. Tears flowed down his face as he roared at the sky, his hair standing on end, and he waved his sword in all directions. But the demon beast's cultivation was too high. It swallowed me in one gulp, and endless darkness surged towards me. I forced myself to calm down. Mu Yu was still fighting the demon beast outside. I couldn't fall. Steely courage emerged from my body. I reached out with my 3-inch divine claw, cut open the demon beast's innards, and plucked its demon spirit. The demon beast crashed to the ground. Mu Yu thought I was dead, and his tears were like a broken dam. It wasn't until I weakly crawled in front of him that he hugged me in joy and said, "Little Shuai, you are too brave. You are my pride. It is my honor to have you by my side. Love you, Little Shuai, you are too great. Little Shuai, you are the best." Many children began to exclaim, and praised Little Shuai's courage. They were all subdued by Little Shuai's spirit. Mu Yu shivered, and goosebumps appeared all over his body. When he heard "love you," he was instantly petrified. He felt that the awe-inspiring image he had built in the village chief's story had suddenly collapsed. The village chief made him stand shoulder to shoulder with the sun, and Little Shuai made him lie in the latrine. What do you mean by crying? What do you mean by steely courage? What do you mean by "you are my pride"? What do you mean by saying goodbye to my brother? Crying here and there, Can't you happily fight demons and level up? Mu Yu had never realized that Xiao Shuai was also an expert at telling jokes. His ability to steal the sky and change the sun was really amazing. He even suspected that Xiao Shuai had received the teachings of the village chief, the old trickster, and had become a hidden trickster. Compared to little Shuai's story, Mu Yu still felt that the village chief's 3 beats white chicken spirit was more reliable. At least Mu Yu still had a brave image, and in little Shuai's story, he became a supporting character who only knew how to cry. Little Shuai, don't tell stories, eat the drumstick. Mu Yu took out a drumstick and threw it into the distance. Little Shuai's eyes lit up, and his true colors of a foodie were fully revealed. He hurriedly ran towards the drumstick. Finally, the village chief passionately repeated the story of immortal master kneeling to the old village chief. That was called spittle flying everywhere, and his voice was full of emotion. Mu Yu smiled very happily. The village chief magnified his story only because he missed him. Old people always liked to proudly tell others about their children's various strengths. Even if it was exaggerated or fabricated, it was just a sustenance in their hearts. What Mu Yu could do was to cooperate with the village chief's simple wish. Mu Yu left a lot of body-strengthening elixirs for the village chief. Elixirs were usually used by cultivators, but there were also some elixirs that could strengthen one's foundation and strengthen one's vitality. It was also beneficial for mortals to extend their lifespan. He reluctantly left Flowing Water Village. This pure land where he was born and raised was the most beautiful place in his memory. However, if the immortal confinement prison was not lifted, this place would also become a hell on earth. He was not willing to see this happen. Moyun mountain range, his road began here, and he had to protect this place. Chapter 266. The teleportation was very smooth this time. Although humans' teleportation formation could not teleport humans, Mu Yu did not reject him because of his ability to control wood. Little Shuai was stuffed into the Mu Ling by Mu Yu. Although it had always been tough, in order to prevent accidents from happening again, Mu Yu did not let it go through the teleportation formation directly. After a huge tearing force, he landed firmly on the ground. With his first experience, he was clearly more proficient this time. However, the moment Mu Yu landed, he could clearly feel that something was wrong. There was a thick, pungent smell of blood all around him. Mu Yu looked around, trying to see where the smell of blood was coming from. Unfortunately, the fog blocked his vision. At this moment, a whoosh sound came from afar. It sounded like something was whistling in the air, or something was flying at high speed. Mu Yu immediately went into the Mu Ling. The Mu Ling turned into an inconspicuous blade of grass and hid in the fog. Did you notice anything strange? A deep voice rang out. Mu Yu saw 2 Huayumeng whose skin had cracked open like lava was about to burst out of their bodies. The last time he came here, he did not see any human. Why would there be Huayumengs this time? The 2 Huayumengs looked around, as if looking for something. Nothing strange. The other Huayumeng was floating in the air. His body was covered in flames, and he slowly landed on the ground. The flames slowly retracted into his body, and he looked no different from the previous Huayumeng. Strange. I clearly heard the teleportation formation's ripples. I thought someone used our teleportation formation again. Forget it, let's go. We didn't get anything from this trip. Let's go back and finish off the rest of the humans. One of the Huayumeng licked his lips with his scarlet tongue, as if recalling something. Then, he left with his companion. What do you mean by finishing off the rest of the humans? Mu Yu's heart trembled. He had been in the 2nd heaven for almost a year. He was not sure what had happened in the 3rd heaven. However, he knew that human had declared war on the human race again and even invaded human cities. Could it be that some humans had been captured by human? Mu Yu had always harbored a grudge against the people of the 3 continents because Feng Haochen had given them nearly 100 years of peaceful life, allowing them to live and work in peace. However, this true god who had sacrificed himself for the human race was separated from his family. He couldn't even recognize his own daughter. He was even betrayed by the threefold palace. Even the millions of people in the Moyun mountain range were going to die. He knew that the ones who should be hated the most were the threefold palace and the cultivators with evil intentions, not the ordinary, innocent mortals. If human attacked the mortals, Muyu wouldn't just stand by and watch. The flames on Hua Yuming's body burned as he flew, creating a series of sounds of friction as he flew through the air. He flew at an extremely fast speed, leaving behind a faint scorching sensation wherever he passed. In order to avoid being discovered, Muyu didn't dare to follow too closely. He could only rely on this scorching aura to follow him. The last time Muyu came here, he didn't discover any traces of human because Lanshi City was just a distance away. Lanshi City was a large city with a large population and was prosperous. If human made any movements, the human race would definitely discover it. However, Lanshi City had been attacked by the fire human once before. Thousands of people died under the threefold illusionary formation. Muyu still remembered this incident clearly. After that blow, Lanshi City might not be able to recover from it. He didn't know how the situation was now. The thick smell of blood became clearer and clearer. Muyu even discovered traces of blood along the way. These bloodstains had dried up for a long time and were splattered all over the gravel on the road. It was obviously the blood of the human race. It seemed like many people had died here. However, the two fire human ignored it. They didn't see any human corpses along the way. After flying for about half an hour, they turned into a mountain stream. A river appeared in front of them. It flowed gently and the water was very clear. There were many lush and verdant trees that reached the sky growing on the riverbank. The branches of these trees were crisscrossed. There was something hanging on the branches that swayed gently with the wind. Muyu's pupils contracted and he held his breath. He was almost scared stiff by the scene in front of him. There were human corpses hanging on the branches of the trees in front of them. These corpses looked like they had been dead for a long time. They were hanging on the trees and had already dried up. Their bodies were wrinkled as if their blood had been drained. The thick and solid branches pierced through their collarbones and hung them in mid-air. Many of the leaves on the trees were a strange red color that was bright and glistening. Muyu felt an indescribable anger in his heart. These people were dressed like mortals without any cultivation. However, they were captured by the human and died here. Their faces were distorted as if they had experienced great pain before they died. Many of them had their lifeless eyes wide open. They died with grievances. The human actually massacred the human race like this. Muyu watched as the two Hua humans flew through the forest as if they didn't see them. They disappeared into a cave on the cliff of the mountain stream. His heart burned with anger. Muyu thought of the old tree chief's words. The old tree chief had said that the Mu human advocated peace and did not like war or killing. However, so many humans had died at the hands of the Mu human. The old tree chief's words were better than a song. However, Muyu continued to walk forward for a while. He discovered that not only were there human corpses hanging on the trees, there were also pale and swollen corpses floating in the river. There were even corpses on the soil by the riverbank. Many of the corpses were buried in the ground, leaving only their heads exposed. This scene made Muyu feel a trace of sorrow. Those were the lives of living people. Muyu clenched his fists. He didn't know why these humans had been captured, but one thing was certain. These people were all mortals without cultivation. They were powerless against the humans' murderous hands. He recalled what the two Hua human had said. It seemed that there were still humans alive. Without another word, he chased after them. Muyu had the human's ability, so his aura didn't seem to attract any attention. Instead, he silently entered the cave where the two Hua human had disappeared. As soon as he entered the cave, a wave of scorching heat hit him in the face. The temperature also rose abruptly. Muyu raised his guard. He knew that he might have entered the lair of a Hua human. His ability was to control wood. In the face of fire, he was restrained. If many Hua humans rushed out at this time, he would definitely be in a difficult battle. He might not even be able to escape. The cave wasn't deep. Mu Yu walked forward for a while before the area in front of him suddenly opened up. This was a huge cave. The ceiling of the cave wasn't very high, but there seemed to be some bubbling sounds coming from below. He carefully poked his head out and looked down. What he saw shocked him. There was a deep abyss below. It was hundreds of meters high, and at the bottom of the abyss was boiling lava. The lava kept bursting out, causing sparks to fly. Some of the sparks flew high, almost reaching the entrance where Mu Yu was. This place was like the lair of a human. There were many human playing in the lava. The lava was like a hot spring to them. They splashed the boiling lava around, letting out low and unpleasant laughter. There were many arched bridges above the lava. These arched bridges were very small and were formed from solidified lava. They must have been built by the human. Some of the human sat on the arched bridges, playing around in boredom. With a glance, Mu Yu saw a huge stone slab that protruded from the rock wall. There were 4 humans on it. The 4 of them were still alive, but their bodies were surrounded by scorching flame cages. Among them, 2 of them had faint spirit energy fluctuations. They seemed to be cultivators. The other 2, one old and one young, didn't have any cultivation. The 2 with cultivation were young men. One of them was wearing yellow clothes. His face was pale, and his aura was weak. He sat on the ground, gasping for breath. The other person in white clothes was lying on the ground. He seemed to have suffered heavy injuries. He was only exhaling and not breathing in. Of the 2 without cultivation, one of them was a middle-aged woodcutter. His eyes were closed, and his face was filled with despair. His chest was dripping with blood, and he seemed to have suffered heavy injuries. The other was a young boy. He looked to be 7 or 8 years old. His eyes were filled with fear as he curled up in the arms of the middle-aged woodcutter, shivering. Go. Go. Hurry up. If you walk over, we will let you go. Jejje. When the jeers rang out, Mu Yu realized that other than the 4 of them, there was another human on the small wooden bridge below. This bridge could only allow one to stand on 1 foot. Below was terrifying lava. One misstep and they would be consigned to eternal damnation. This was a man with a face full of curly hair. He was shivering in fear as he stood on the arched bridge. His entire body was trembling. He was practically lying on the bridge, but his hands didn't dare to touch the bridge. The bridge was boiling hot, and his shoes were already burnt. Human, who was below, was getting more and more rowdy. He was getting more and more nervous. Suddenly, flames burst out from the bottom of his shoes, scaring him. He screamed as his body tilted, and he fell down. Below the arched bridge was boiling lava. It was swallowing and spitting out tongues of fire. In the blink of an eye, he was drowned. His screams came to an abrupt end the moment he was licked by the tongues of fire. Only a few bubbles were left in the lava. A burst of smoke rose from the splashing lava and quickly dissipated. Mu Yu closed his eyes. The boiling lava seemed to have ignited the anger in his heart. He couldn't save that mortal in time. He could only watch as he was buried in the sea of fire and became a tool for the fire human's amusement. Even if he wanted to save him, there were so many human here. He couldn't possibly succeed. Why are these little burning men so annoying? Xiao Shui poked his head out. Mu Yu clenched his fists. The fire human's amusement made him feel nauseous. He had never seen such cruel methods before. It was no wonder that the humans hated the fire human so much. They were truly deranged. Who else wants to watch the barbecue of the humans? There are only 4 humans left. A human shouted from the side of the flaming cage. The other human below started to jeer. All kinds of low cries rose and fell in an endless stream. They liked to watch the humans walk across the boiling bridge. They liked the expressions of despair on the humans' faces. They liked the pleasure of watching the humans being swallowed by the lava even more. To them, torturing the humans was their daily entertainment. It was as if they wanted to vent all their resentment of being trapped in the Moyun mountain range on these mortals. So far, none of the captured humans had walked across the wooden bridge. Then, which one of you 4 wants to go first? Walk across the bridge, and we'll let you go. A Huayumeng flew up and laughed at the remaining 4. He then waved his hand, and the flames that were guarding these mortals returned to him. Chapter 267. Father, I'm scared. The little boy clutched the woodcutter's clothes tightly. His watery eyes were filled with fear, and he did not dare to look at Huayumeng. Every child had heard of the Yumeng's legend. Their evil had long been deeply rooted in the little boy's heart. Now that he saw the fire Yumeng with his own eyes, the fear in his heart had reached its peak. Little Mo, don't be afraid. Father is here. The woodcutter protected the little boy behind him. He looked at Huayumeng fearfully, then looked at the unconscious white-robed cultivator on the ground with concern. Then, he glanced at the yellow-robed immortal master beside him, who had a gloomy expression on his face. Only immortal masters with extraordinary means could defeat Yumeng. However, the 2 immortal masters beside them were no match for the fire Yumeng. One of them had even been knocked unconscious. Of the 4 of you, who wants to go first? Keek. You just have to walk across the single-plank bridge. Once you cross it, I'll let you go. The Huayumeng Devil clan member said darkly again, as if he was sizing up a few toys. Even through his dry and cracked face, one could tell that his expression was very playful. He was thinking about which toy to let go up first. You 2 mortals go first. Mortals' lives are not worth anything. The yellow-robed immortal master beside him pushed the woodcutter. He was a cultivator from the Jindan period, but he did not have any ability to retaliate in front of Huayumeng. He knew that with Huayumeng's means, it was basically impossible to escape. However, he still had a trace of hope and did not want to die so quickly. Immortal master, the woodcutter shrank back and sighed in his heart. The yellow-robed man was a high and mighty immortal master, while he was just a weak mortal. Their statuses were completely different. Even if he did not want to, he had no choice. Stop talking nonsense. If you mortals die, you die. If you don't die, you'll become a burden to us, the yellow-robed immortal master said fiercely. Like most cultivators, mortals' lives were not worth anything in their eyes. The woodcutter sighed and shook his head slightly. Everyone said that immortal masters were fighting against the Yumeng to protect the human race. However, the master immortal in front of him was using them as a shield in order to survive. This made him feel very helpless. The middle-aged woodcutter lowered his head and said lovingly to the little boy, "Little Mo, wait here. Dad will be back soon." "Father, where are you going?" "I'll go too. I don't want to leave Dad." The little boy grabbed the middle-aged woodcutter's clothes and said anxiously, "Little Mo, don't be afraid. Master Immortal will protect you." The middle-aged woodcutter glanced at the yellow-robed immortal master. This was the only way he could console him. Ever since he was young, he had told his son that if he met Yumeng, he would be safe as long as Master Celestial was around. His son also believed in Master Celestial without a doubt. However, when he met Master Celestial and Yumeng, he realized that even Master Celestial was no match for Yumeng. Master Celestial had even pushed them to their deaths in order to survive. Shakily, he stood up and walked towards Huayumeng with fear in his heart. He had no choice. There were so many people captured. Most of them were mortals without cultivation. Only 2 of them were Master Celestials. However, these usually dignified Master Celestials were no match for Yumeng. One of them was even injured and unconscious. Only the other Master Celestial was still threatening him. If he didn't go, then his son would have to go. There were more than 20 mortals captured. Every time, Huayumeng would make one of them step forward and cross the single-plank bridge. Everyone was unwilling. They all hoped that the Master Celestial would be able to kill these Yumeng. However, the 2 Master Celestials they met didn't have any tricks up their sleeves. In order to survive, the yellow-robed immortal master forced everyone to follow Yumeng's orders and die. The single-plank bridge was extremely hot. Stepping on it was unbearable. How could the mortals cross it? Countless people were buried in the lava below. They became Huayumeng's tools for ridicule. Under the threats of the Master Celestial and Huayumeng, the captured mortals were all buried in the lava. The number of people kept decreasing. Now, it was finally their turn. The middle-aged woodcutter didn't want to die. However, there were only 4 people left. He couldn't let his son cross the single-plank bridge first. The other Master Celestial was unconscious, and the yellow-robed Immortal Master was threatening them. There was nothing he could do. "Master Celestial, I beg you. If you can escape, please save my son." The woodcutter turned around and begged. "Cut the crap. I can't even save myself. Why would I save you? Stop dreaming." The yellow-robed Immortal Master spat. His expression was extremely cold. The middle-aged woodcutter was filled with despair. He secretly prayed that another Master Celestial would come and save his son. He looked at his son reluctantly. His eyes were filled with love. He hated himself for not being able to protect his son. "Little Mo, take good care of that unconscious Master Celestial. Do you understand?" The middle-aged woodcutter instructed. Actually, his words were completely unnecessary. How could a child protect an adult? If nothing unexpected happened, after he died, his son would probably be pushed to his death by this ferocious Master Celestial. "I understand, Father. You must come back." The little boy leaned against the wall. He hugged his knees and said anxiously. Under the urging of Huayuman, the middle-aged woodcutter took one last look at his son. He hoped that his son would be reincarnated into a wealthy family in his next life. He trembled as he walked down the stairs. He came to the other end of the single-plank bridge. The middle-aged woodcutter poked his head out and looked down. There were many Huayuman moving around in the lava. The lava that could instantly incinerate humans did not affect them at all. He stood in front of the single-plank bridge. However, he didn't dare to continue forward. So many people couldn't cross it. How could he? "Hurry up." Huayuman smiled evilly. A spark landed on the woodcutter's back, burning a large hole in his clothes. The woodcutter cried out in pain. He had no choice but to tremble as he walked forward. He gathered firewood for a living. He wore straw sandals. When the straw sandals came into contact with the scorching single-plank bridge, they instantly emitted a burnt smell. He had just taken a second step when the straw sandals burst into flames. The flames burned his soles, causing him to groan in pain. He hurriedly rubbed off his straw sandals, but he immediately regretted it. When his bare feet touched the single-plank bridge, his feet were already scorched black. The soles of his feet could no longer hold on. His body tilted and he fell into the magma. He heard many Huayuman laughing maniacally and cheering. He was so helpless. However, at the last moment, his mind was filled with the image of his son, Little Mo. When he thought about how his son would follow in his footsteps, his heart was filled with grief. Being swallowed by the boiling lava should only be a matter of an instant. Dying in an instant was not a big deal. Death was not scary. Most of the fear of death came from the few seconds before death. It was just scaring oneself. However, was this what death felt like? He did not feel any pain. There was no burning pain. However, he heard Huayuman's angry cries. There seemed to be something roaring around him. He only felt something tighten around his waist. His falling momentum had been stopped. Following that, something seemed to bring him up rapidly. He opened his eyes and saw a 17 or 18-year-old young man supporting him with a serious expression. The young man was standing on a beautiful sword. It was like a rainbow. The young man was holding another sword. This sword was extremely strange. It looked like it had been bitten by insects and was in tatters. "Immortal Master, you are an immortal master?" The woodcutter cried out excitedly. He glanced and saw many Huayuman soaring into the sky from the scorching lava. Flames covered the sky and covered the earth as they chased after them. "Immortal Master, can you save my child? Can you not care about me? Can you just save my child?" If he could, he wanted to kneel and beg. He was a father. If he had to choose someone to live, he would definitely choose his child without hesitation. "Uncle, don't move. I will go and save him." Mu could no longer watch the woodcutter fall into the lava and become Huayuman's nourishment. Even if this was Huayuman's lair and there were many of them, he still had to try. He was furious. It was not only because of Huayuman, but also because of what the yellow-robed immortal master had done. In front of Huayuman, that fellow had actually threatened other mortals to die first. The shadow clone sword shone with boundless green light and viciously slashed at a few Huayuman. The first few Huayuman that had caught up were struck down and knocked down the other Huayuman that had flown up below. He used the momentum to rush toward the little boy. A branch appeared from Mu Ling's body and instantly wrapped around the little boy and pulled him over. The woodcutter hurriedly hugged the little boy tightly. "Little Mo, it's fine. It's fine. The immortal master has come to save us." The middle-aged woodcutter hugged the little boy in his arms, his body trembling uncontrollably. He was content that his son had returned to his side. Mu Yu saw the conscious yellow-robed immortal master. That fellow's eyes were filled with the desire to live. It was as if he had seen his savior. He stretched out his hand toward Mu Yu. "My lord, save me," the yellow-robed cultivator shouted anxiously. Mu Yu's eyes were filled with disgust. This kind of selfish fellow, who treated the lives of mortals like dirt, should not be alive in the first place. More and more Huayuman roared and pounced over. He could clearly feel the discomfort of Mu Ling's sword. It did not like these flames either. Mu Yu turned around and wanted to leave. However, the woodcutter said hesitantly, "Immortal Master, can you save that unconscious Immortal Master? He was injured by Huayuman because he wanted to protect us. He is a good person." No wonder that unconscious cultivator was so badly injured. It turned out that he was protecting these mortals. Mu Yu did not want to save these two fellows with cultivation. He was very close to the exit. If he only brought the father and son out, there was an 80% to 90% chance that they would be able to escape. Those Huayuman were still flying upwards. They would not be able to catch up with Mu Yu. However, the woodcutter's words made him grit his teeth and rush toward the opposite side again. He knew that with this delay, there would be some obstacles if he wanted to escape. However, he had his own principles. He could ignore the selfish yellow-robed cultivator, but if the other unconscious cultivator was really as the woodcutter said, then that person was worth saving. "My lord, save me." The yellow-robed immortal master saw Mu Yu rush over again and immediately shouted in joy. Mu Yu once again swept up the unconscious cultivator. That person's breathing was weak and he was on the verge of death. He hesitated for a moment before bringing the yellow-robed man over. Perhaps this fellow was selfish, but he was still a member of the human race. Since he was already here, he might as well give him a ride. Mu Yu clearly felt a sense of strain while carrying 4 people. He immediately slowed down. He also had to deal with the flames coming from all directions. To him, flames were the thing he hated the most. A few Huayuman had already pounced over. They were slashed apart by his shadow swords and fell down. However, countless Huayuman continued to charge forward. He turned and flew towards the exit. Just as he was about to rush out of the cave, flames that filled the sky shot towards him like venomous snakes, causing his body to slow down. When he wanted to continue forward, the cave entrance was blocked by Huayuman. "I didn't think that there would be a fish that escaped the net. Hehe, not simple." Huayuman's body flashed with flames as he glared fiercely at Mu Yu. "You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.